Oh, on YouTube as well. Yeah, in the days before 24-hour broadcasting, people just listen to local radio, which God knows what's happened to that these days. But yes, people used to have to sit there and wait for the TV to start. So so many people watching on YouTube before you even started. What are you doing? Surely you've got something else better to do. You're not an absentee. So what happens when you get big-headed TV people involved in it? Now he's on holiday again.
Banned.
That's more holidays than Judith Chalmers. There's a dated reference for your listeners.
Banned.
Oh, is he banned? Sorry.
Didn't he say London would stay up?
I think he tipped London. Yes.
Mind you, didn't you say London would stay up?
I did, yes, I
You're
did
banned
indeed.
as well.
I did indeed, and I say I wanted an apology for Newcastle Rovers because I didn't get relegated, so he's not here.
Well,
I've had my OKR people onto me saying, Scully, make sure you get ripped in that Wilson because we want an apology. We're not bottled us. We've not got relegated. But I'll tell you what, how close will I get relegated?
well, we were talking about this before coming out. Let's just say London had won by a point. And that Wakefield would have been saved because their points difference was sufficient to keep them up. If Hull KR had gone down on a golden point
Again,
extra time drop goal
what
to
happened
solve
3 years ago, exactly. I'll tell you what I want to discuss then, fellas. Just,
Good evening, everybody. By the
Yeah,
way.
good evening, everybody. If I sound a little bit ropey, I've got a bit of cold, so I don't know if I sound ropey, to be honest with you.
You just need chocolate.
I just thought, Phil, leave the top 5 alone because they've still got plenty to play for the season. But I'm going to do like a headmaster's report on the season from London, OKR, Giants, Trinity, Rhinos, Catalans, and Hull, i.e. points out of 10.
Marks out of 10.
Marks out of 10, yeah.
Not like because we don't do ABCs and Ds.
No,
You know,
it's divisive.
so we'll go to the marks out of 10. Obviously, we'll start at the bottom. You know, London. What do you reckon with London then for the season?
Well, I think bearing in mind that we're not looking at where they finished, we're looking at how successful they've been against the odds. I think you'd have to give them an 8 out of 10.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. 8 out of 10. I don't think there's any complaint to that, do you?
10
to be honest?
victories out of 29 games.
Yeah.
Um,
Every pundit was saying maybe maximum 3 games, maybe they may win. Some
I
were even
also
saying
think
none.
virtually every one of their players you would give 8 out of 10 for the season.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the one thing you can't fault is their commitment, passion and effort. And I think if you've got that, actually it doesn't matter where you finish.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative at the end of last week, the story would have been if they'd avoided relegation. And,
Yeah.
you know, hats off to Wakefield because they were just too good on the day. But to take it to the last game with the resources that Danny Ward had and the acknowledgement that they didn't go out and heavily recruit. And I think there is an issue that we'll talk about a bit later that their accounts are very worrying, as indeed are Wigan's at the moment. I think for what they've achieved this year, 8 out of 10.
Sensational, absolutely.
What do you reckon?
I totally agree.
Yeah, that's fair enough. 8. Is this like the marks in the paper where they never go below 5?
Well, we're knowledgeable, we're experts, we know what we're talking about.
Like
So,
I won't go that far.
so I think our opinions will get very much respected, to be honest with you. Hulkiston Rovers.
I don't know about that either.
Hulkiston Rovers, before the season started, we anticipated maybe they would finish higher than Hull. We anticipated Hull maybe finish about 9th or 10th, and Ulkr maybe finish in the top 8. Ulkr just scraped in, as we mentioned there, certainly with the golden point again. It could have repeated itself 3 years ago, but it hasn't. They've managed to survive the season for them.
It's a really interesting, because I think you're right. When we all sit there in January, we have an optimistic view of perhaps how they're going to do, and I think we felt that they were going to challenge this year. Maybe not for the top 5, but that they wouldn't be involved in a relegation scrap. Now, obviously, Tim Sheen's started the season. Recruitment looked okay with the likes of some of the players that they'd signed. Parcell they got later, but Garbutt, Kindhorst. Probably a 6 for me, maybe 5, because I think that they've ended up
Very lucky.
where they were the year before.
Very lucky.
They haven't improved.
Well, I was going to say a 5, Phil, if I'm honest with you. I think overall, as we know, well, a lot of sides, if we just look at the top 5 from there, St Helens, the only side that's been consistent compared to everybody else. But when you look at Hull KR and some of the sides, what they have beaten, but then also as well losing the 3 home games, Huddersfield, London and Wakefield, that just tells you that the journeymen, unfortunately, not good enough. That's why they've had a bit of a rethink and a reshake and got rid of it. I tell you what, I'm very surprised at the Wigan who they're getting shut off.
Ryan Shaw.
Ryan Shaw, very, very surprised. When I looked at his stats on CFAX this morning, what's he played? 87 games, 47 tries, 141 goals. You know that kid, defensively he's alright as well, but the kick and score tries, but also too what he does, he turns the 4 into 6. Quality goal kicker. I'm surprised they're letting him go, but for me it's a 5 out of 10.
They'd already decided that I think they'd signed Ethan Ryan from Bradford. So.
Right.
Rich?
Yeah, I think you'd have to say they're going to be around. I think a 5 is fair enough because they did sign some big name players. They were expected to improve. I'm trying to find where I predicted everyone to finish this season. I think I put Salford near the bottom, as many people did as well. But Hull are interesting, aren't they? Because they've got to kick on from this season, next season. The recruitment perhaps suggests that won't happen. The fact that their coach has started making excuses about the format of the league, and that's what they are, because as soon as you give your players license to say, "Oh, relegation shouldn't exist," if you finish at the bottom, then
I think as well when you read the league express as well, big piece on Danny Maguire, you know, and rightly so, to be honest with you, because he has been one of the best players that's been in the modern era of the Super League. But, you know, Danny's going out to he's going to Australia, he says, for 4 weeks. He's going to Melbourne Storm, he's going to Parramatta, and he's going to Newcastle Knights. But I'm asking the question, what for? They've signed all the players.
To learn how those clubs operate as a director, as head of recruitment, I think. But he's going to see some old friends.
I read that. I can understand that.
And he'll have a tour around. As he said, he's only ever played for 2 clubs, one for the vast majority of his career, one right at the end. He doesn't know how other clubs operate.
Yeah, but to be honest with
you, getting into management.
Yeah, but Phil, we cannot operate like Australian clubs. They operate totally different. You've been there yourself with the Leeds club and all that sort of thing. The football side compared to Leeds is 2 different sort of businesses. We can't compete.
It won't do him any harm to broaden his experience.
Well, I understand that. I'll buy into that. But also as well.
But I'm not sure it's going to make any difference.
But there's not any players that can sign. Well, they signed another journeyman, the Sean Kenny. Has that been announced yet? Sean Kenny.
A few weeks ago. Yeah.
I reckon it will now that they're secure.
Now I found about this because Matt sent it to me, and I remember this now because I had Hull KR above Hull FC, which was a bit.
I think we all did.
I think we all rubbish as well. We'll come to them in a minute. I had Hull KR finishing 8th. So if you look actually at the bottom league table, it is tight. So that's my excuse for getting it wrong. But they've underperformed.
Yeah. So we're on agreement 5 out of 10 there.
Sounds good.
Huddersfield Giants. Well, certainly again when we look at the start of the season and certainly what Walford bring, and also they did make the 5 last year, didn't they? And the aspirations and a couple of players that they brought in from there. Utai, the winger. Well, for me, he's been garbage.
Whether he has or hasn't, he hasn't played.
There's been
they paid a lot of money for a bloke in his early 30s in a position that they didn't need.
Yeah, exactly. You know, looking for him to be a marquee signing when he's been garbage. To be honest with you, Frawley, he's been an absolute disaster at halfback from there.
Recruitment's just been poor.
Again, that's the big problem. The recruitment from there. So, but the Giants, we had them a lot higher than finishing well. Just 2 points above, didn't we?
I've got your list here.
Yeah.
I've been sent it by a source, which is Matt, because I've just told you. You had Huddersfield finishing. I got 2 out of 12. You got 1 out of 12, right? Apparently. You had Huddersfield finishing in 8th. Again, pretty much.
But I think they've underperformed.
Very much so.
I think to be at risk on the last day of the season, and at one point with Catalan beating them on Friday night, if London had rallied, Huddersfield were in danger because Hull KR were winning. London never looked like winning, but had they made a better start to the game, Huddersfield at one point were in danger of going down. So I think they're a 5 out of 10 as well, if I'm being honest.
5.
We're going 5 on there.
Right. Okay. Right. 5. Wakefield. Well, we had these knocking on the top 5, didn't we?
I think we all said the signing of Danny Brough might be that edge into. They finished 5th in the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah.
This year, the benchmark was 5th.
Yeah.
So we thought you only need to be as good as you've been in the last 2 years, and you'll be in the playoffs. Yeah. But you've signed Danny Brough, and that might be the added ingredient to ensure you get
final piece of the jigsaw.
So again,
why hasn't
on the last
right? So why hasn't and I'm not buying into excuse of injuries because everybody's had injuries. I'm not going to take an excuse of injuries.
On CFAX, you wouldn't have seen this because they don't do things on CFAX. There's the hello to our listeners on Facebook. A great framing of the shot today. There. After the game, he said injuries. £800,000 worth of talent.
I'm not buying into that.
But then after spending 2 minutes talking about injury, he said, but they're not an excuse. He said,
I'm not buying into that rubbish. I'm not buying into that garbage. I'm not.
Gary Carter asked a good question about attitude of players. which was kind of deflected away a little bit.
I think
when
that
players fancy
for me the problem for Wakefield was not the number of injuries, because as you say, every team at some point has had injuries.
Yeah.
It's the fact that the senior players, when they really needed to hold it together,
To step up.
weren't playing.
Correct.
So when you lose people like Danny Kermond and Matty Ashurst, that has an effect. Because if you haven't got a lot of those, Danny Ruff was out, had a broken thumb for a while. So you take your core of experience out of your team, that will have an effect. It's not necessarily the amount of injuries, it's who's injured. But I definitely have Wakefield as a challenging for the top 5. So I think, again, best I could give them is a 5. I think they've underperformed.
Well, I think I did Wakefield at 9 for it, Chick? Have you got my list on there? I think I am
just
down
restarting
there.
the phone.
I didn't.
I think you had them 7th or something.
So,
I had Wakefield
and
6th.
I didn't think the Danny Bruce situation was going to work. It hasn't worked, and I think Wakefield, from the clubs who have missed the top 5, and the anticipation was, and massively from the top 5 with the signing of Bruffy, I'm going to give Wakefield a 4, because I think there'd be massive disappointment, and surely they think they're pretty happy that they just managed to avoid relegation, and I'm afraid to say they need to take a long hard look at themselves, because overall, with the anticipation and what the aspiration of the last 2 seasons, finishing the top 5, the jigsaw was supposed to be filled with the Danny Bruce signing. As it worked, they get a 4 out of 10 for me.
Well, he turned up for the final game of the season, so that was good.
So
Yeah, all right. Then, they won 2 games in 13. Is that good enough, Richie?
No. But apparently it gets you into the Coach of the Year nominees if you have such a bad run of form. But no, it's not good enough. And I think everyone's not good enough. So it'd be interesting to see which players are announced as coming in. I think we all know, because everyone knows everything, that Alex Walker and Jay Pitt's coming in from London. Who else comes in will be interesting. I've heard some names that people would be surprised at. Well, one name at least.
What's this space, isn't it?
Yeah, very surprising name. We'll find. We'll see, won't we? I mean,
So what would you give them out of 10? As
I'll just give it
your
a 5.
vote?
Yeah, it's been disappointing, hasn't it? I think as people have realised, the Chester Art Brigade are just. I mean,
I'll use your phrase. They're idiots.
one bad season after 2 very good ones and one where we snuck into the playoffs because Salford got a points deduction. I'll take that. I'll take one bad year. It's like Leeds fans at the moment. You just won everything for 20 years, but you have a couple of bad years. It's not that bad, is it? It's not that bad.
Do you want to do our competition before?
Well, it's not a competition, but you can. Let me find the thing, because you can get right. You see this shirt. This is not just thrown here just for the sake of putting it there behind me. You can get a New Zealand Kiwis rugby league shirt plus a T-shirt for a bargain price, less than half price. See there it says £54. No, I'm auditioning for QVC now. £26. All you have to do is head to the Mascot Browns website, mascotbrowns.com, and use the hashtag, use the promo code, I should say, The Legend Speaks.
Is there a word missing there?
That's not the competition, is it? So there it is. New Zealand Kiwis jersey, £26 plus a free T-shirt using the code The Legend Speaks at mascotbrowns.com, and you've got until midnight tonight. So if you're watching on catch up or on, it's like when they do it on ITV. Don't enter this competition if you're watching on repeat, because we'll get fined. So if you listen to the podcast, you've got until midnight on Monday. If you haven't, you missed out sadly, but still head to Mascot Browns.
But we're hoping to do one of these a week.
Yes.
So
when we do this properly, we'll sort it out. But there you go. So New Zealand jersey, remind you later. The Legend Speaks. It's there. Mascotbrowns.com. £26 for a shirt and a free T-shirt.
What T-shirt is it?
I don't know.
England and New Zealand in Denver.
All right. Okay. Right.
Collector's piece.
Fair play. Right. So you two gone 5 Wakefield. I've gone 4 Wakefield. Okay. The Leeds Rhinos, Phil.
Season of 2 halves. If you'd have marked them for the first half of the season, you'd have probably given them 3. I think for the second half, culminating in what was the best performance of the season last Friday night, probably give them 6. But I think again that they finished roughly where we envisaged they would, mid-table. I don't think we had them challenging for this season.
I am 5th.
I think we all thought the David Furner era was going to herald change,
Yeah.
and it clearly didn't. It was the exact reverse. This is now, what, 3 of the last 4 seasons where they've underperformed. I think there are some mitigating circumstances about transition. I know we've had the debate throughout the year. A mid-table team, you can only give them 5 if they're a mid-table team.
A mid-table team with 2 players in the dream team. We'll
How well they must have played.
We'll ask him about that later, because he was.
What-
You can't blame the media this year.
One of them did alright.
Can't blame the media this year. Yeah, Leeds again. You give them a. Well, I think they've finished 3rd. I think 3rd or 4th. I'll have to go back onto my thing.
So Phil, you give how many? 6?
No, I'd give them 5 overall.
5
I
overall.
was going to give everyone 5, apart from Salford, who I'll give 10 to. Yeah, I had Leeds finishing 4th because I thought with the players they brought in, I thought they had less disruption than Wigan.
Yep.
Because the whole theory was Adrian Lamb's coming in as a bit of a patsy for a year. They've lost a load of good players. Lo and behold, they go on and are going to win the grand final. And Leeds have disappointed. But yeah, so Leeds are 5. But the best thing about Leeds this year is you walk into that stadium and you feel you're in a proper, modern sporting venue, which you can't say for many of the clubs in our sport.
Yeah, well, I say, well, to me, I can't give him no more than 5, to be honest with you, from there. And I say the David Furner management didn't last very long, did it from there, and yeah, he got a tune out of the players, did Richie Agar from there. And I guess a big disappointment was, the players were brought in from a point of view, the senior players for the first part of the season. It was them who were letting Leeds down. It wasn't the young kids, we've seen the progression of Newman, Ash Hanley, Jack Walker, and it was the senior players, but it was pretty obvious that they didn't want to play for David Furner. They got in the sack. The players went to go see the management. They got in the sack. Richie Agar got a tune out of the players, and made himself serve with 24 points. But I've got to agree, can't give him no more than 5 out of 10 for the season what we've had.
Just imagine if they'd signed Paulie.
Cattle and Dragons, right then. This is an interesting one, isn't it? For the overall season, what they've had.
I think we all thought, having won the Challenge Cup, having signed a couple of winners, that they would make the 5.
And Matty Smith.
I had them 3rd. I had them finishing
And I
3rd.
think it's not an unrealistic expectation looking at their roster. I think the one thing we said was, will they overcome this ridiculous travel issue that they seem to have? And we thought with the likes of Tompkins and McAlorum in the team, they probably would, because they're the kind of guys that sit down amongst the players and just go, not bothered where we play, it's the same game. But they haven't cured that. And the most disappointing for me is not that they didn't make the playoffs, but they just haven't played an attractive style of rugby this year. Whenever you see the name Cattle and Dragons on the fixture list, you think, well, they'll go down with fighting, they'll play with flair, they'll entertain. They haven't done any of that this year for me. They've been one of the most disappointing teams in the division in the terms of the fact that they've taken some fearful beatings. They've never even looked convincing at home. If they'd have won every game at home this year and still finished mid-table, but no improvement. In fact, I think they've gone backwards this year. Again, maybe I'm being predictable because I'm giving everybody 5, but I can't give them any more than a 5, to be honest.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm giving them a 4 if I'm honest with you from there. And on 2 accounts, that's the question. Well, the defence of the Challenge Cup was absolutely pathetic, wasn't it?
Awful.
Absolutely pathetic. There wasn't even any fight to challenge for the Great Cup itself on there. And also as well, Phil, when they went to Barcelona, they got that great victory against Wigan. Did they make too much of that?
Well, they never kicked on from it, that's for sure.
That's what I'm saying.
That should have been the springboard
Yeah.
to say we're definitely finishing in the top 5. There seemed to be a division within the team between the way the French would like to play the game, of which you probably put Tony Gigot at the top of that, and the way the English players or the Australian players were playing the game. So, if you're going to bring Frank Cassiano in, play him as a pure enough to offloader, get everybody running off him. They never really sort of developed something around him. I'm just disappointed with them.
Yeah, hugely.
I understand why Bernard Gouache is saying I need to stick with my coach and change some of the players, because it's very hard to do it the other way around. You can't just sack all your players. And they are bringing James Maloney.
I would imagine the way that the way that some people played, I would imagine if he could have done it, he would have sacked him. Don't worry about that. He would.
And the rumour is that Drinkwater will come back next year, so it'll be Drinkwater and Maloney.
That's Drinkwater, who's almost got Hulkington Rovers relegated.
Because he had a good season.
So what's going to happen with Lange there then? Because he was sensational last year at standoff. You know, so that's going to be another player who's going to be totally cheesed off, isn't he? Because he wants to play standoff. He doesn't want to play anywhere else.
The balance right.
Interesting. So Catalans, I'll give him a 4. Yourself?
Yeah, I'd probably go 5 because they finished mid.
5. Rich?
I'm tempted to give them 0 for that performance at Leeds a few weeks ago because that was one of the most disgraceful things I've ever seen. I'm turning to that great clip of David Coleman after Italy-Chile in the 1962 World Cup. If you've never seen it, it turns into a fight. And obviously we don't condone violence. And he's really angry. But that was a poor performance. I'm going to give them 3. I know they finished just outside the playoffs.
Expectation and reality it's probably not far from the
minus 192 points. They've got a worse points difference on Wakefield and Hull have had some awful games this year. And Leeds have got a positive points difference. Madness.
So 3 for you, Richard. For Catalan Dragons.
We don't have any viewers in Catalan anyway. So
last but not least, the black and whites. I'm a little bit thinking to myself, the comments, what I read, what Lee says in the paper, you know, we're pretty happy because, you know, people didn't think we finished more than 7 or 8. We finished in the semi-final of the Challenge Cup. People didn't think we should finish in the 5, so I'm pretty happy. Is that right, Phil? Are they happy, the black and whites?
In some respects, he is right, because I think if you look at all our predictions,
we predicted them
pre-season,
yeah.
We didn't have high expectations for them. We thought that the team had gone on a year too long without it being changed, that a lot of people were out of contract, were coming to the end of their tenure, perhaps had been maybe played on a year later than they could have done. We knew that there were 13 or 14 of them coming off contract, and you've got to manage that rather than get to the end of a season and everybody leaves and everybody comes in. So I think we thought it would be a tough year for them. But I think you need to look at the other side of the coin, and that is up until about 5 weeks ago, they could have been second. And they've not.
They were knocking on the door to being second.
And they've not even made the playoffs.
Knocking on the door for being second.
So that's got to be a huge disappointment. I think the semi-final performance, although again Warrington played very well as they did in the Challenge Cup final, I thought Hull were disappointing. I just expected a bit more out of them. I thought they'd win that game on the basis of the fact that they'd become a very good cup fighting team. Yeah. And I thought that they surrendered a little bit too easily in that game, made too many mistakes. I don't think they've ever sorted out the half-back situation. What is their best combination of players? I think we've all decided that midway through the season, I think we wanted to see Jake Connor at 6 because we felt it was a talent. I think now it's come to the end of the season, not sure he is going to be a 6. But I don't know if Lee Radford ever got that balance right between Shaw and Kelly and Sneed and Connor. The spine didn't seem right at any point this year.
Yeah.
So I think on the basis of where they could have finished, with about 5 weeks to go, I'd probably give them a 4 because I've been really disappointed with how the season's petered out. But I think if we look back to where we thought they'd finish, it would probably be a 5 or 6 because they finished where we thought they would.
Well, to be honest with you, I can't even make a debate of what you said there, Phil, to be honest with you. And I'm the same with the points. I can't give them no more than 4 points, you know, for the season because it has been an absolute washout for the last 5 or 6 games from there. And you look at the teams what beat them there at home and home and absolutely hammered them.
Magic weekend. I look at that defeat by Huddersfield and the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
Magic weekend. If you want to be a top side, you can accept being beaten, but you can't be beaten like that. And that happened on 3 or 4 occasions this year. That's why they've got minus 123, even though they finished 6th. So, too inconsistent. Either too up and down for me.
4 out of 10 for me for the season. Richie?
Well, as I said, that Hull Carroll finish above them, which was wrong. I'm just going to give them a 5. I don't think you can use the Challenge Cup as a positive or a negative when you only have to win 2 games to get to a semi-final or whatever. And those 2 games could be the best of the world against West Wales and Keighley. That's a lot of turnover of players.
It's going to be next. I think they delayed it too long. They're going to look a different team next year with the recruitment that they've already done and maybe 1 or 2 other players coming in. They've probably also got the rookie of the year in Nalaga. And I don't think we saw on anybody's radar that something like him would make such an impact, which is to their credit. But I just think they left it to. If you remember what Adam Pearson said at the end of last season, we're gonna no contract safe. We're gonna have a clear out. We're gonna change everything around. They didn't do it, but they're gonna do it this year. I just think they've wasted a year.
People are now taking far too much credence into these random numbers we just plucked from our brains.
Oh, what is,
Because Scully's asked us a question 10 minutes ago.
is there dispute on social media?
I don't know. We'll move on in a moment. Well, we'll move on for Super League for the moment because we'll come back to it later because I think we need to talk about the Championship because and League One to an extent because we've got a few issues going on in Rugby League at the minute. I was taken to task on Twitter last week for not giving enough time to talk over the Swinton thing. I think I gave it enough time that it deserved because why do we need to spend hours and hours and hours talking about a club which gets an average of however many people watching them? We may as well spend 4 hours talking about Hunslet, who in their big final game of the season or potential final game of the season got a crowd of 332.
How pathetic is that?
You know, and it's not knocking the people who go, it's not knocking the clubs, it's knocking the fact that as a sport we're almost held back.
Well, the two games, it's Newcastle and Doncaster, Hunslet and Workington, 1,000 a crowd. 2 games, 1,000. Absolutely pathetic.
You know,
I think the Swinton debate is interesting because changing the name on its own is not a panacea that people are suddenly going to wake up and go, because it's Manchester, I'm going to go. You have to have investment in your players. So, you know, Swinton have spent most of this season, they finished it really strongly, which is their credit, but they did spend most of the season battling against relegation.
Yeah.
So changing the name of the club is not going to alter that. Change the name of the club and add 5 or 6 signings that make you a potential top 5 challenger next year. I can understand that. The two need to go together. Otherwise, it's more of just a cosmetic exercise. I think the directors have every right to do whatever they think is necessary to change the fortunes of the club. I think the one thing I am slightly surprised about is there was always going to be some resistance to this name change. There was always going to be a core of supporters who were going to say, well, Swinton will always be Swinton, we've got the history and heritage of Swinton, even though we don't play in Swinton anymore, it's the name, it's the colours, it's what used to be Station Road, and if you're going to take that away from us, we're going to be upset about that. Now that is no excuse for abuse on social media, and we've talked about that with a number of clubs and people. We are in a horrible part of the world at the moment where people just feel as though, you know, Neil Hodgson has come out this week and said that some of the abuse he's had for keeping Hull KR going is totally unwarranted, and I agree 1,000,000% with that Andy Maisie, who has kept Swinton going, should not be subject to any abuse. But I just think the ease with which the directors have said, okay, well, you know, because I had abuse, we're not going to do it, when they must have expected some resistance, is a little bit of a worry for me.
I mean, here's some interesting quotes from Andy Maisie in today's League Express, story by Gareth Walker. Here's the one that springs straight out of here. An online petition was launched, and within 12 hours there was between 500 and 1,000 names on it. And those people who obviously don't care enough to go watch this team week in, week out. I spoke to Karen Morehouse and Ralph Rimmer, I've heard of those, of the RFL. This isn't a case of splitting the dummy and running away. All the directors have resigned bar Steve Wald, who is a paid employee of the club, and he will stay on and able to enable the transition of the club to the next owners. I will strip the budget right down so the club isn't reliant on myself and the directors' investment, because I don't want to see the club come to any harm. You know and I know, and anyone watching this programme who's got half a brain knows, all these sporting clubs, be it football, rugby league, rugby union, whatever, rely heavily, for the most part, on benevolent people who made loads of money and want to throw it at professional sport for whatever reasons, altruistic or not. And it's not as if owning Swinton is going to make you into some kind of mega celebrity or get you the adulation of hundreds of thousands of people.
I would go back to the fact that Wigan have just announced a loss of £1.4 million. They're the current defending champions. London, who've been back in Super League this year, for last season when they won promotion into Super League, made a loss of £1.6 million. So, you know, clearly, whatever Andy Mays is putting into Swinton is going to keep them alive. wouldn't question his motives for one moment. I think he's done a fantastic job to keep them a mid-table championship team. But it's almost as if at the first sign of resistance or opposition, of which there was always going to be some, we'd rather withdraw and leave somebody else to do it. Something there for me doesn't quite balance.
I just don't know where we go as a sport.
Well, I think you raise an interesting
with
issue
teams
there,
like Swindon.
because this is the wider issue that we've spoken about on a number of occasions, about what do we want Super League to look like? What do we need it to look like for a broadcaster to invest in the sport, at least the level they're investing in at the moment? And then you bring in this whole thing about Toronto, where Robert Elston in his comments today in the build-up to the playoffs is saying it isn't 100% certain that Toronto have got the green light to come into Super League, that there's still due diligence. How can there still be due diligence?
Exactly.
The playoffs have started. You know, this time last year when Toronto were in a similar position, they were fighting for a place in Super League, they were given the green light. So what has changed? You cannot, as a credible sport, whether it be Swinton changing their name to Manchester or Toronto being on the verge of a chance of being in Super League, and say 3 games out from that, we're not sure we're going to let you in. So does that mean that London are being told, keep all your players together because you're not being
And they can
relegated?
only get a reprieve.
Are Toulouse being told,
Well,
if you finish second, you might go up because we don't have the same doubts? As a fan, whether it's of Swinton or Wigan or Toronto or Dewsbury, when the sport itself can't make the tough decisions, why would you want to own a club? Why would you want to support a club? Why would you want to buy a season ticket? We need to decide what we are, what we want to be, what we're trying to be, what we can be with the resources we've got. And again, I go back to something we've discussed for nearly 2 years on this programme. We've got a full-time element with some owners who are prepared to back their teams, perhaps uneconomically, but they want to be full-time and they can provide the resource to be full-time. And we've got part-time teams. Now, Swinton quite clearly fit into one model and not the other at the moment, and the game itself has to find something meaningful for each of those halves of the game to play. So the 1895 Cup is a step in the right direction. Next year, Swinton or Manchester can plan to be at Wembley if they're good enough to get there. We need to have a championship final for part-time teams that ends up at a venue, maybe like Headingley, with 15,000, 20,000 people there, promote the hell out of it, and the winners get £250,000, which will pay for at least one more season. But it doesn't necessarily have to lead to promotion. And I don't think we're discussing any of these things. One of the other things, without monopolising the conversation, and we probably should get some feedback in a minute, is what the other thing that's been confirmed by Rob Elson is we've got loop fixtures again next year. Well, when is the game going to come to the reality of the fact that what's turning fans off at the moment, that one of the reasons why Wigan have made a loss of £1.4 million is that people won't go and watch the same fixture 3 or 4 times. We don't want the season to start at the end of January. Scarcity breeds more interest, and more people will go and watch. And I think it's a false economy to say we've got to have a minimum of 14 home fixtures. If you only have maybe 12 or 11, and you market the hell out of them, if you don't go and watch Wakefield and Wigan this week, you won't see that fixture again. That's what we've got to do. And I'm not sure we're addressing any of those issues. You know, as you say, if Toronto do get the green light, somebody might be going there twice next year in the regular season. They might be going to Toronto twice, they might be going to Catalan twice. It's just, as a fan, you can't plan what you used to be able to do. We need to work it out.
Peter says no, Toronto, they will not bring anybody. Well, we may as well invite the Cass women's team into Super League then, because they'd bring a lot of people.
But it's nothing to do with what they bring. What they've got at home is between 8,000 and 10,000 fans that we currently don't have.
And you dare say that the amount of fans Toronto took to Bradford a few weeks ago is probably more than some of the teams at the bottom end of the Championship took to Bradford this year.
They took more than some Super League teams take to away games. But if you can't market... See, again, the counter to that is, what did York do when they played Toronto last year? They made it a massive event. You know, Toronto don't come to York very often. There's a lot of people that have got business interests here in Canada. Will approach them. Will actually market the fixture as being unique and different. And they got, what, 3,500 people there?
Well, it's like on Friday after the game, I was on TalkSport 2 doing the updates, and I was asked about losing London out of Super League, because Mark's been on and said before, you know, they obviously had a lot geographically, and I made 2 points. One, it's not as if Rugby Union's massively geographically bigger than us, it's just they've got 2 northern outposts in Sale, and which is not really in Sale, and Newcastle, and the teams that could be replacing them, this was the big point I made, could be Toronto, could be Toulouse. But, you know, we can keep the sport, you know, within these boundaries, and we can have a sport where people moan about Thursday night fixtures because they can't get to a game an hour away on a motorway, and forget that we used to have
an hour away on the motorway, 3 hours on the motorway.
we used to have midweek games 20, 30 years ago, and people didn't moan.
The
I
whole
don't understand
principle
what's
of
going on.
Super League, when it was brought in, which changed the face of the sport and brought in a level of finance that we haven't had since and we're still desperate for, was a model whereby Maurice Lindsay, for all he was laughed at, said we're going to be playing in Paris and Milan and Barcelona, and the idea was one of expansion and extending the footprint of the sport. And you know, by losing London, which I think is massively strategically important for the sport in terms of its profile, you know, we've lost Wales, we've lost Sheffield, we've lost Gateshead. You look at Paris originally. You look at all the places we've been to where we could have extended the interest in the sport as a whole, and we butchered it. Now we've got a chance to maybe make that right, and we're all saying, "Oh well."
But also,
I don't want Toronto because they won't bring any fans.
But also as well though, Phil, and I say we've seen the piece with Mr. Lenigan from there, and last week's game against Cass cost the club £50,000. Rugby League clubs can't afford to.
Yeah, but being on TV, having a deal with Sky gives them £1.8 million a year.
Yeah.
So it swings and roundabouts. If Ian Lenigan doesn't want to be on Sky, then we can turn the sport back to an amateur, you know, semi-professional sport as it was in your day, and no one will care about it anymore.
I think the fact
and then we can all play in these pit villages where they're in a pit anymore.
I think that's an injudicious comment from Ian Lenigan on the basis of the fact that we're just entering a very sensitive period with our major broadcaster about renewing it. Now, I wouldn't be turning around to them and saying, you've cost us 50 grand and it's because we're playing on a Thursday night. If Sky are paying us £40 million, the piper calls the tune.
Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, we saw last night, Sunday night is a good slot for viewing. But the problem is, people will then say, "Oh, I can't get on Sunday because I've got school the next day." Work.
It's a slot if it's a meaningful game. That was a really that was an elimination playoff game. It wasn't a regular league fixture.
I think we have to sometimes remember that yes, we are a sport for spectators. Obviously, we're all important, but we're also a television product.
Absolutely,
and they pay a lot more money. And sadly,
I mean, I know this week, Friday night, virtually everybody was playing. But the total number of fans that went to, you know, Freaky Friday or whatever we were calling it, and the other 2 games suddenly had meaning as well with where was Salford and Warrington going to finish. We didn't get more than just over 50,000 fans actually attending.
I know Dawn said it's about changing fixtures at the last minute. Until the last few weeks, all the Thursday games were set in stone at the start of the season. And it is unfortunate. I'm not saying it's an ideal situation, but they pay that money. It happens in every sport. It happens in football.
I mean,
Leeds United games get booed for the
Dawn is right, but whoever she supports survive on the money that the broadcaster give them to buy the players that she wants to go and see.
I think we've been told, haven't we, that the salary cap is covered by what is given
at
by
the moment.
Sky. And all the rest of the money you have to generate yourself to pay for everything else. And we don't know what's going to happen with this TV deal. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think it's going to be. But we don't know what the country's going to be.
It is for the Championship and League One
clubs.
Well,
we keep being told by people within the Championship that they can generate their own TV deals worth millions of pounds. Now they wouldn't be lying to us or spreading untruths, would they, to push their own agendas?
I don't know what's going to happen with the television deal. I do know it's the most important thing that is going to happen in the next 2 years, and probably the most important thing to have happened over the last 20 years. Because if we get this wrong, or if we can't convince broadcasters that we have a product that they need to cover, then I'm not sure the sport as it currently looks at the moment can survive. I don't know how, I mean, again, I'm not picking Wigan as an example, they've just announced their figures, but when the leading team in terms of the one who are currently the champions made a bigger loss than
last year.
the previous 2 years put together, that's got to be a concern because they're being subsidised by the extent of their salary cap. Now, if a club as strong as that, with a name as big as that, can't make it pay, what would happen to the likes of Wakefield if they didn't have the Sky money?
People are concerned they might be able to catch a cold via the internet. I don't think you can catch it, Steve. I think you're all right. Wigan aren't on TV every Thursday. Not the same teams aren't on TV. I know it's an inconvenience. We almost have to get away from the fact that you can't watch everything. You can't go to every game. I don't know how people in football, you see those mad people in football who haven't missed a game for 100 years, and I don't know how they do it. You've just got to accept that we are not high enough on the pecking order in this country of sport or anything that we're going to be able to have our games at a set time every week. As I said earlier, Leeds United get moved all the time to be on telly because they get bums on seats on the telly. It's just a fact of life.
I just think Wigan should have looked at that as a compliment to the fact that their game needed to be moved because they could have the chance of finishing second. It wasn't moved at random. With rugby, with relegation being the focus for the other games, one game had to be moved to the Thursday, and Wigan were chosen because of their success. It wasn't a penalty. It just happens.
I mean, you'd be pleased to know that we are the only media outlet this week who haven't got David Cameron on the show, but we do have New Zealand Rugby League shirts to give at a discount for you, thanks to our friends at Mascot Browns. Go to their website, mascotbrowns.com with a Z. Put in the promo code The Legend Speaks. It's there. My handwriting's terrible, that's why I'm not a teacher. And we'll probably end up battering the kids with being pains in the backside. 54 quid usually, 26 quid with us there. And a free t-shirt. Mascotbrowns.com. Put in the code The Legend Speaks. And you've got some.
And International Rugby League is now.
Well, I think you said a lot of results. There's loads of them at the weekend. Everyone going on.
Big weekend. First time ever 2 women's internationals have been played at the same weekend in Europe. Debuts for Greece, which is great, and Serbia, their first games. So I think there were 5 different countries, at 6 if you include Peru playing Colombia, even though that was in Australia. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But we're going to get more of this in the next few weeks. Get your shirt.
What about England shirt? Forget about the Kiwis, get England jerseys.
Win a Great Britain shirt in the new issue.
Yeah, let's get a Great Britain shirt. Never mind a Kiwi jersey. Hey?
There you go.
Well, unlike
Friday's back. Win a Great Britain shirt in the new issue of Forty20.
What's the question to win it?
The question is, what was the score when Great Britain beat the Kangaroos in Sydney in 2006? Don't tell everyone.
Oh, right.
No Wikipedia. We've got to change it now.
It's a New Zealand question. We're not playing the Kangaroos.
The Friday's back.
Oh, right. Great stuff. Brilliant. Absolutely.
It's coming soon.
Let's get a Great Britain jersey up there. Forget about the Kiwis.
You'll be pleased, but I know we don't do the Women's Super League bit until later, but the Wakefield's try against Leeds, which you can see on our Facebook, I've nicked it. I think I'm allowed. Great vision and awareness on the Wakefield dummy half. Annie Mae Shackleton saw the gap, saw the hole in the Leeds defence. Leeds thought, we'll play like the men's for a big hole, went through.
I tell you what, fellas, I must say, I don't know if you watch the NRL, but to all our listeners and our viewers out there, I don't know if they watched the Parramatta game yesterday, but I tell you what, Scully was absolutely loving it yesterday, because when I talk about vision and awareness, I mean, the example there of Parramatta from a point of view where a coach just wants to let the ball do the work, and the dummy half, the hooker, will send in 10, 15, 20 metre passes to his half-backs, and then his half-backs will literally send them 15, 20 yards to each other from first man to second man, and then when they were changing the player, there were Wally Lewis passes 25, 30 metres. The Brisbane Broncos defence didn't have a clue what was going on. But when you talk about the vision and awareness, and also to playing into space and playing the numbers, it was absolutely a pleasure to watch. And can I just say to all coaches out there, from Super League, from Championship and from League One, just have a look at the way Parramatta played yesterday against Brisbane, and if you want to win more games, if you want to bring the crowds back, let's play like Parramatta, because that will bring the crowds back. It was sensational.
2 things about that. A, it was a sellout.
Was it ever?
None of our playoffs will sell out. But Bankwest Stadium was, you couldn't buy a seat. And the other thing is, it ain't 5 drives and a kick. So if anybody isn't watching the NRL at the moment and thinks it's just purely method, it isn't.
But
That
even
was
it-
as entertaining a display,
It-
even though it was one-sided,
It was like what
as you could ever wish to
It was
see.
that what his good mate Davo said last week regarding the loose forwards. They are playing like old-fashioned loose forwards. Well, say I apologise, not old-fashioned loose forwards. I apologise for that statement. They should play out. Loose forwards should play with ball skills, going to the line and offloading before they go into
Well, one
contact.
of the Roosters tries, which again I think you can get on
The Roosters.
NRL.com, the one that Tedesco scored, that
Yeah,
rippled through about 6 pairs of hands as they exploited the right hand side. Just brilliant skill.
Phil, it's not just brilliant skill. It's players, right, making it happen, right. So what the Roosters did, it was quite simple. They said, you know what, the Souths have only got 4 defenders there, so we're going to send 5 attackers. That's all they did, and so it's with the skills. Yeah, of course I do, but to be honest with you, when you're a kid, you learn to catch and pass. You learn to catch and pass before you go into contact. But the great thing about it was the half-backs. How good is that Cleary, by the way? Never mind playing with Cooper Cronk. We know what an immortal Cooper Cronk is. But Cleary as well, the responsibility what it takes off Cronk. But all they did, quite simple, we play the numbers, catch pass, support back on the inside, good night, God
one
bless.
of the passes
Brilliant.
was a beautiful
Oh
pass
yeah,
out
the
back
centre.
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But catching and passing, he's just playing a numbers game and letting the ball do the
But
work.
it's so beautiful to watch.
Letting the ball do the work, it can easily be done, Phil. Easily be done. But anyway, all coaches, please just have a look at the way Parramatta played yesterday and start playing like them, because they're an absolute pleasure to watch.
Brisbane are going well, aren't they?
Not next one.
No.
Brisbane, they're gone.
John Bateman, as tweeted this on Saturday morning, if he was a footballer from this country doing what he was doing in a foreign league, he'd be in the best league in the world, be held up as some kind of genius. I'm not saying he's the best player in the NRL, but they all love him, don't they? And he was key in their victory over the Melbourne Storm.
Well, one thing again,
Wales are back.
And I've said about John Bateman, he's a freak of a rugby league player. And if I'm honest with you, I never doubted that he was good enough to play in the NRL, but it was just a matter of his size, But they can't even handle him, So again, from the freak of a player, what he is, he's even more of a freak of a player because the Aussies, it doesn't matter if there's 2, 3, even 4 guys. They literally can't wrap him up.
But he's not big. He's
not big. No,
he's
he's a
not
freak.
like,
No, he's not muscular. And this sort of
we
thing.
went down the road of if you were a big lad, you got signed. Now, it's the engine that he's got that means in the last minute he's working as hard as in the first minute. But he is absolutely dynamic.
Absolutely. But also, too, he's got a coach there who will let him express himself. And Ricky Stewart, I know Ricky pretty well. And, well, we all know Ricky Stewart as a player himself. He loved the old Wally Lewis and also too as
Can
well.
they get to the grand final?
Oh, I doubt. No two ways about it. Can they? And I say with Bateman, he's an absolute freak of a rugby league player. But if you look at him, he's like the old Mucker League Crooks. If you put Crooks in a £1,000 suit, it still looks scruffy. And John Bateman's the same in the rugby league field. You think, he doesn't look like a rugby league player. But boy, oh boy, when he gets that ball in hand, and defensive wise, they can't even knock him off defensive wise.
Potential.
Sensational.
Dally M.
Why not? Why not?
I think so.
Why not? It's been sensational.
Any dispute as to anything we've been saying?
Well, plenty always is, isn't there? But I was going to mention something Daniel sent in to us earlier, and he's sent it in again on Facebook, so I'll mention it now, about Steve Price, who's been nominated for the Super League Coach of the Year, which I don't understand. Because they've been on an awful run of form. They've thrown away second place and finished 4th. Yes, they won the Challenge Cup, but that's not a Super League competition as far as I remember, unless it fits when it suits. And Daniel's asked the question, because of that run of form, without the Challenge Cup, would he still be in a job, or would it be sacking round the corner? If you look at our form, lost 8 of the last 9, the only team we beat was Wakefield. And that's relegation form, which we all called for Bradford to get the sack last year. I'm not saying he should, but it's a discussion point. I like Price, I just like opinions. I don't think he should be on the Coach of the Year shortlist at all.
I think there's 2 things there. I don't think you can have 4 coaches on.
Correct. Where's the 4?
When there's only 12 teams.
Where's the 4?
It's too much.
I don't get that.
No. And I don't think that his record in Super League this year stacks up with the other 3. So we haven't spoken yet about Salford, and we must, because finishing 3rd is just the most astonishing achievement. And irrespective of whether London had stayed up or not, I've been saying for a couple of weeks, I think Ian Watson is the Coach of the Year. I don't think you can argue with Holbrook, because his team have finished by a record number of points at the top of the league. No team has ever done that in any era.
Yeah.
So you've got to reward excellence.
Well, yeah. Consistency.
Danny Ward, you've got to acknowledge the job that he's done, whether they got relegated.
He gets my vote, as I've said.
And Watson, for me, is
yeah.
Now we talk about where we all had teams at the start of the season. I think we all.
I think that's Salford 10th. I think that's Salford 10th.
So to end the last week of the season, to go above Warrington and finish third, that is just a phenomenal achievement.
Absolutely.
You don't need Steve Price in that. I think what Steve Price was saying after the game on Friday, because I think he was shell-shocked with the way Warrington performed. There was a lot of emotion around Emerald Headingley because of JJB in particular. Yeah. So I think Leeds wanted to send him out in the right manner, and Warrington couldn't cope with that. Warrington's tactics were odd for me, kicking early and never really looking to play any rugby in the early part of the game. But I think what Steve Price said in the press conference afterwards was, we know how to play knockout football, exactly. And we proved that in the Challenge Cup. Yeah. So I'm not going to get too hung up about our form at the moment. I know I've got a group of players that can do the job, and he's possibly right that I don't think we can judge his contribution until Warrington get knocked out. Last year they got to Wembley and lost. This year they've got to Wembley and won. Last year they got to Old Trafford and lost. This year we don't know, they could still get to Old Trafford. So I think the jury's out on him, but for me he wouldn't be on the list of 4 nominees for coach of the year.
I apologise, but I've got cold. But I agree with you. Why have we picked 4 coaches?
Too many.
I don't get it. All right, I buy into Holbrook without a shadow of a doubt with the consistency of 52 points, and Watson and Danny Ward. Well, you can't overlook them, can you?
No.
Simple as that.
So you're responsible for the dream team selection.
Your fault.
I'll tell you what my side was.
Well, I was going to ask because I want people to. I mentioned this yesterday we mentioned this yesterday on Twitter. Sending your dream team of players not in the dream team, and we will give away a magazine.
Well, I'll tell you my dream team. I picked Zach Hardiker at fullback. I picked.
Let me get the real one up so I can.
Yeah, we've got it there. Yeah, I picked Zach Hardiker, Regan Grace, and Makers on the wings. I had Percival and Naguama in the centres. The halfbacks the same, Blake Austin and Hastings. I had Luke Thompson, Darryl Clark, and it was between Alex Walmsley and Liam Watts, but I went for Walmsley, and then exactly the same there in the back row in, Josh Jones, Liam Farrell and Morgan Knowles. So I Conrad Hill and Ash Henley.
They're the ones that are getting most question marks on because they're playing in a team that have finished nowhere near the playoffs this year.
Lachlan Coote, the reason why I went for Hardiker, Lachlan Coote went out for about 6 or 7 weeks, wasn't he? 5 or 6 weeks.
But I think if you apply that principle, you can't have Liam Farrell in there, who's been really good when he's been there.
Yeah, he missed I can understand
2 or 3 months.
I can understand
I think Jack Hughes is unlucky not to be in the second row. I think he's been fantastic for Warrington this year. And I know Blake Austin will be in the running for Man of Steel, but for me I'd have Johnny Lomax. Because I just think he's been the cog behind everything St Helens have done this year. And that's harsh on Austin because he's been brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think that Lomax week in, week out, for me has been the best player in Super League. And maybe Oliver Gildart in the centres.
Because we will now know who is the Man of Steel because it was done after the final round. They just announced it on the 6th of October.
Yeah, 6th, yeah.
That's at the Lowry Theatre.
Yeah, I'm there myself. Yes.
Tuxedo.
As far as I know,
you're representing us, so you've got to be smart.
I'm there. Yeah.
Well, we'll also find out who's the coach.
I should be. I'm an ex-winner of the Man of Steel anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. You should be
You're on the panel.
Oh yeah, when I went to the Man of Steel 3 years ago with Brett Kenny, 4 years ago with Brett Kenny.
You sit in the corner.
Huh?
Brett who, they said?
Top meter maker you gave out that.
Top meter maker I give, and Brett Kenny give top tackler.
Which we already knew anyway.
Looking at numbers.
Well, Brett wasn't going to make top me his creativity, and me top tackler. Jesus, I told everybody before I've had to make all the 6 tackles a game. The donkeys were getting thrown off.
I must say the other thing that I am going back to Parramatta.
Yeah.
They've named their 4 stands.
Oh, yeah.
Great that Brett Kenny's got one of them named.
Yeah, Brett Kenny, Mick Cronin, Peter Sterling
and Ken Thorne.
Ken Thorne, yeah. I'll tell you what, they'll left some out, haven't they?
Yeah,
Ray Price.
But great that Brett Kenny is permanent.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Mick Cronin, Sterling and Ken Thorne. But I'll tell you what, Ray Price, Mr. Perpetual Motion.
Good player.
Boy.
Eric Grove.
Eric Grove, you look at Steve Ella from a point of view, and Just
But I
sensational.
just thought it was great as they pan round.
Oh yeah,
Each stand had somebody and you go, oh, brilliant.
You could see it all there, but I'm surprised Ray Price wasn't mentioned because he was Mr. Perpetual Motion.
So when are they going to name the Western Terrace at Headingley the Gary Schofield Open Terrace? The away fans to enjoy standing on.
Yeah, nice one, Rich. Nice.
Well, that's a serious point.
Yeah.
In the Hall of Fame. Both Leeds and the. When do we find out who's going in this year? The Rugby League Hall of Fame.
What is it?
Oh, is it not?
I think
Oh.
they've done enough inductees for the last one or 2 years. At the end of the day, it's an exclusive club. You know,
Oh,
you don't just put any Tom Dick in
But
it.
here's the thing, and without.
But it should be an event. The sport needs events. If we had one night where even one player was inducted.
Well, I agree with one player, but
And
not 4 or 5 at a time. If they're
look
going to do it that way.
Look at what the NRL.
Well, there's only 9 there, mortals.
But they started putting the top 3 people in that were not players. There's always ways you can have an event. So Ray Warren's in, and
Well, they've got the Man of Steel, don't they? They give Neville Smith an award, didn't they? They give Eddie Emmys an award, didn't they? You know, so. But no, you can't have the biggest honour in the game.
yeah.
You know, every year.
Well, this goes back though to without getting into the controversy attached to it, the Jeffrey Boycott thing, right? He's knighted at this point in time. When did he finish his career? Mid-80s? Way past his peak in mid-80s, right? So what's he done in cricket since then? Nothing. What's he done since then? Stuff. There are people who will go into the Rugby League Hall of Fame whenever they deem we're going to have another ceremony, who will have done nothing since they retired because you can't, whose reasons to be in the Hall of Fame have not increased or decreased since this point now. It's a bizarre thing. They are bizarre. But I don't know who chooses it and why. There's no rhyme or reason. Peter says the dressing gown terrace at Leeds. That'd be good. Gary Schofield and Morrison's in
It's got to be grey though, not blue and amber. It's got to be grey.
Get them sold in a club shop.
There used to be a line of merchandise.
I'll model them. I'll model the dressing gown.
Your moniker on the pocket.
Absolutely. I'll model the dressing gown and a big picture of me on the back.
Well, I've seen your modelling career in the past.
It's a bit harsh, Richie. It's a bit harsh. It's a bit harsh.
Well, you're following sofas as well. Plenty of people saying, why didn't we sort out the Toronto thing before the start of the season? It's Rugby League.
You can't not do that.
They
To be taken as a credible sport.
We do know the Rugby League are, renowned for moving the goalposts.
Very nice.
Moving the goalposts.
Nice
where do we want it? Where do we want to move it this time of the season?
Not to Toronto.
How do you sell the idea to Toronto fans? So the new fans to the sport.
Well,
To get 8 or
they're only
9
there for the beer garden film. They're not real. They're those cardboard.
And then you
crowds
tell
on
them,
this sport
by the
is
way,
life.
even though you've enjoyed watching your team and have won the league, they can't get promoted.
Well, it's in the league, especially from the new chairman, the gentleman who, Bob Hunt and whatever, he's had meetings with the Super League and all this sort of thing. Hold on. They're literally 2 games away from qualifying for Super League, so why is this debate happening? It's either should be crystal clear, you're not coming in, or you are coming in.
Or they've given the financial guarantees that are needed, or they haven't.
Yeah.
And if they haven't or they can't, then say before the playoffs start that they're not eligible for promotion.
Oh, for those asking why I'm not wearing a Castle shirt, one is being sent in from me. I will wear it in the next coming weeks because I said wait for the finish of the Castle.
Oh, by the way.
Oh, he's got to have this.
Oh, is this the bath of peace?
Absolutely, because I was going to bring it to the mushy peas in and just to say thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to say thanks to the Hull players for not making the top 5 because the legend doesn't have to get in a bath of mushy peas. And all you Hull fans, and as I say, I'm going to mention the next player. And you know who he was? Carl Sanderson. Carl Sanderson, Crooks' big mate. When they beat Catalans, when Sneed kicked that drop goal near, then he kicks it from the halfway line to level the game, and then he got the drop goal. And Carl Sanderson and Crooks, they were all over them, whatever. And the stick they give me, Scoey, don't forget, you have said Hull won't make the top 5, and you will be definitely getting in the mushy peas. Carl Sanderson, no, I am not.
Kind of doing a kind of bits and bats thing before the teas arrive. Dawn's mentioned the George Hotel's up for sale.
It is.
And should Rugby League buy it or whatever. Only if it's worth something. Because there's no point in
I
buying a
think,
building that's not worth anything.
Again, we've got something on that in the new 4020 out now. I think the plan has been endorsed by English Heritage but that plan has to include almost a repeat of what Mike Stevenson did. So they will give planning permission for it to be turned into a hotel and offices, provided there is an area that commemorates that this is where Rugby League began.
Yeah.
Now, if that happens, the Rugby League don't need to own it, but certainly it needs putting in a stipulation of planning permission that there has to be a memorabilia section.
Oh yeah, Hall of Fame section, yeah.
Whatever it is, however it's done, however often it changes. So I think the fact that it's up for sale and the new owner is keen to incorporate Rugby League for the 2021 World Cup, that will be fantastic. If we can get the George Hotel back up and running with recognition of more than just a blue plaque on the outside.
Do you know what's well? I forgot to mention, it was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, when it was said that the opening ceremony is going to be in Newcastle?
Yeah.
Well, didn't I say that to Nigel Wood and Ralph Rimmer 3 years ago? We was up there and said, listen, bring it up here, under lights, Newcastle, it'll be a sellout. And I tell you what, I met a gentleman at the Casford game a couple of weeks ago and I was doing the Man of Steel points. Jordan, Jordan? Yeah, his name. Yeah, Jordan, and he's going to be part of the 2021 World Cup up there, you know, we promoting it. And I said, well, listen, if you want any help from me, I'll be there for you. Just give me a call. And one thing what I said to him, Phil, was, you need Rugby League World Cup road shows.
Absolutely, 100%.
Road shows, and this is what I'm going to say now to the World Cup committee. Get Rugby League World Cup road shows. Whenever we're going to be taking all these games, get Rugby League road shows. 20, 25 ex-players will be delighted to do it. We don't want pain. I'll speak for them now, even though they'll Scottish shut up with you.
We should bid for some funding and set these up ourselves.
We don't want pain. Just put us up a night, a couple of beers, and that'll do.
I think you might find we have.
Oh, have we?
Yeah,
But
but
I don't know
what we want. We want Rugby League. We want road shows, don't we? That's what we want.
Welcome to the Women's Super League point of the programme. Now Sky's gone. I don't like how they just say the team sheets on Twitter and don't actually check that they're actually right. Wakefield 6th, Leeds 66. I was there. You see the highlights on YouTube. I was commentating. I almost got all the players right. Most of them. Leeds played plenty of changes, but they won. Kelsey agrees. In fact, this weekend's fixtures have all fairly much ruined everything because, well, I say ruined everything. Well done to Fenn, who came from behind to beat Bradford yesterday, but he does mean that Bradford's run to the playoffs has ended. So, yeah, there's nothing really running on the last fixtures of the season. Barring, of course, if Wakefield beat
the league leader Shields, right?
Well, that could be over tomorrow because if Castleford overcome York, they will be crowned the league leader shield winners in a great parallel with what happened to the men in 2017. But I don't draw too many parallels, dear listener. Elsewhere this weekend, St Helens beat Wigan 28-0. They're good Saints. That semi-final between Saints and Leeds, that's going to be a cracker. Because the seedings are sorted now. Cass will finish top if they beat York. If this is after Tuesday, Cass will finish top. Saints, Leeds and Wigan. So Cass will play Wigan and Saints will play Leeds in the semi-finals, which will be very exciting. Also announced this week, the Woman of Steel nominees have been announced. All the clubs were contacted and all their players have voted. Nearly. And the nominees are Kelsey Generals of Castleford, who scored 21 tries in 15 games this season. Emily Rudge of St Helens, who scored another couple of tries against Wigan. I've not seen enough of her this season because I've only seen Saints once. So I'm not going to comment on who I think should win because I've not seen enough of all the teams. And at Leeds is Courtney Hill, who is the captain of Leeds. They won the Challenge Cup. You remember that? He was on the telly. And
she was player of the match.
And has taken up a very important role in a team which obviously had a big leadership void to fill. So the fixtures this week, obviously on Tuesday it's Cass versus York. On Sunday the game between Featherstone and York, which was delayed earlier in the season, I can't remember why. And then next week it's the final round of fixtures, but there's nothing much riding on them now. Well done to Barrow Island, who beat Alton 16-0. They are second in the championship, and when you think that they're second behind Warrington, only by a point, having played the game more, admittedly, that's a good performance. And they're above Huddersfield, Widnes and Hull. So
that's impressive.
For an amateur team, I know they're all amateurs, whatever, but for an amateur team without the resources that the professionals can call upon, that's very impressive. In League One, Hull KR, they beat Keighley. Keighley the league leaders, Keighley RB that is. Hull KR having their first season this season, but Keighley top. They've got 2 games left, but unfortunately one team's withdrawn. Warrington actually beat Hull the weekend, but the game was cancelled. teething troubles, and
Can I just give a shout out to Untitled Warriors? Well done, Untitled Warriors, got themselves promoted. I'm saying it because my son coaching, it's his first year coaching.
Did he ever come back to you about the issue of dissent?
Yeah, it was, and it was one of the players. It wasn't the coaching staff. It was one of the players, and he got severely reprimanded. I can reassure you from there. But well done, the Untitled Warriors. And I say my son's the head coach from there. Well done, all the other coaches, all the players, and all the best in the League Two next season.
shall I get the disciplinary up because there's been plenty of it.
Well, I was going to say well done to Wakefield and Michael Carter as well, who I think we're all admiring of the job that he's done at Wakefield. Because he has identified a fan who caused some trouble on Friday night and has banned him for a year. That's what we need.
Yeah.
I'd go further. For life bans.
What was he doing? What was the situation?
I'm not exactly in this case, but there was someone who threw a flare and a girl was taken to hospital. Sounds not seriously injured, which is good news. Why people take flares, I've no idea. Stop doing it and ban people for life.
Correct.
They are dangerous. Yeah. They are dangerous.
And again, I'm not,
for many
not here
reasons.
merely to promote the current issue.
Well, I think that's part of the
Why
idea of the
not?
program.
There is a whole feature on whether we are the family sport that we like to think we are. There's a number of caricatures on the cover. See if any of them are you. But the main thing is there's 4 or 5 pages about can we consider ourselves to be a family sport anymore.
I'll tell you what as well. How long is it going to take now with this debacle with Catalans and Warrington?
What more investigations?
Is it 7 weeks? It's been 7 weeks now, hasn't it? It's absolutely pathetic what's going on here, isn't it? Do they think we're going to be able to sweep under the carpet?
The Catalan season's finished now.
Yeah, do they think they're going to be able to sweep under the carpet, do they?
Don't forget, for all your international rugby league needs and merchandise, mascotbrowns.com is the place to go. You can get a New Zealand shirt for 26 quid and a free t-shirt until midnight tonight using the code The Legend Speaks. Put that in the checkout
Legend
box.
Speaks, ...
Yeah, dot.
I'll tell you what,
I might break it.
is that an indication there? Just look at the new 4020 there with the pride is back. Yeah. Jake Collin, a Great Britain jersey. Be interesting what number he's got on the back. Be interesting. Interesting.
Disciplinary review panel has been out. It's been out for a while, but here we come to it at this point. Matt Parcell, Hulkington Rovers, Grade C, Great Dangerous Contact, 3 matches.
Well, he's having a shoulder up, so I presume that'll come with that.
Luke Briscoe, Leeds, Grade B, drops to his knees, 1 match.
That'll be the Boxing Day friendly.
Well, so you got Jesse sending a fail.
Well, we'll come to him in a moment. Matty Smith, Warrington, Grade B, Dangerous Contact, 1 match penalty notice. He played. Collector's item there. Jesse sent
So Warrington can't pick Matty Smith on Thursday night.
Got it. We don't. People will take this as we're picking on people.
No. You saw Matty Smith play on Friday night. Safe to say that if you're comparing the performances of Matty Smith and Blake Austin to Robert Lewin and Richie Myler, pretty dominant one way over the other, wasn't it?
Well, one was good and one was rubbish. There you go.
Rugby Union want to sign him? I don't know.
There you go. So Jesse sending a fail.
Well, Jesse sent left out, who of course is not like. Remember was it Dick Patton that time who smacked something and the coach escaped? He's not that kind of player. Jesse left out. He's religious. He won't do that. He stood on someone. 2 matches.
How many?
2. It's ridiculous, that, isn't it?
It's 2 matches.
Yeah,
2 matches. Well,
he's religious. He's taken into account. You are religious. You're a man of God.
Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Because
you did apologise.
I just want to say a couple of things as well. On Sailor Faye and also to Partington as well. Just about some.
Who got one match? Grade A strikes with arm.
Well, yeah,
and a warning.
But also to and some of his answers. But Jesse sending a fail for what he did. Literally striking the player's head, intent and malicious with the knees, and we're talking about so-called what player safety or with a concussion, striking the head like he did with intent and malicious. That has to be 6 games. That has to be 6 games. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I'll get to the others in a minute, but interesting thing on Partington and Wigan's young players in general, because Paul Cook mentioned this on the video after the game. I thought it was an interesting point. He said it showed a lack of respect.
Correct.
I wondered how you would take that, because...
Yeah. Well, first of all, and he missed it again, did Child. As soon as around the head, he missed it with Partington, ragged off Paul McShane's head. And then also to what Partington, and I'll just give you a bit of advice here now, Partington. I'm sure AJ Lamb will do the same anyway. Do not be showing lack of respect by patting players on the head, because
that's the second charge.
Yeah,
contrary
he didn't get a ban for it.
No, well, it's totally disrespectful, because one thing for sure, unlike nowadays, it's not like it used to be back in my day, because I can reassure you, if he'd have done that to a Lee Crooks or a Carl Harrison or a Trevor Skinner or Steve Roach or a Kevin Tamati or a Les Boyd, well, let me tell you this, what would be happening to you, Partington. It'd have been going to the dentist and getting 6 teeth replaced, because they would have just literally belted him in the gob.
Which we're not condoning.
No, no, I'm not condoning that whatsoever.
But you have to build your reputation.
That's what would have happened back in my day. So the kid is a quality player. The kid puts his body on the line. The kid gets it ripped, and I tell you what, that's what I love. That's what I love about him.
And also, that might even take Wigan to a grand final.
Mate, and also too, did you see, it was him who did the final pass to Smithy. Did you see that pass when it took it? So the kid's got all the skills from there. So what's his first name, Partington's? Oliver. Just let me give you a bit of advice. I'm sure Adrian Lamb is going to tell you exactly the same. You don't need that rubbish in your game, son. Take it away. You're a quality player. You're not going to be far off, I would imagine, being a full international in the next 12 months to 2 years from there.
Listen to the World Cup.
Well, who's to say he may not, who's to say he may not get a call up here with Great Britain, the way that he's playing, the young kid. But listen, Oliver, cut out that rubbish. You're a quality player, and do not be disrespectful to your fellow players, because even in today's game, I can reassure you, son, somebody will line you up and you will totally regret what you're doing. You don't need it, because you're a quality player.
And the other thing is, if it's somebody like Gareth Ellis, who's one of the hardest playing the game and ever has been, he will do it legally, but you won't be playing the rest of the match.
No, because it's quite simple. You can easily do something just by, your elbow, you can easily do something just 2 or 3 inch, easily. So it'll be a matter of a broken jaw.
Matt Cook, who was clearly offended
by
the next tackle he made, cut somebody in half.
Ripped it.
So, and Partington's missing the playoff game because...
Well, just a stupidity, really.
He didn't have to.
Stupidity. He doesn't have to do it. Quality player, and cut it out, son, because you are quality. Simple as that.
Disciplinary. It's exciting. Elsewhere, bad news for the bloke who doesn't like me on YouTube. I'm here this week. Bad news as well for Cookstar Deluxe, my Apple podcast, who left this review for the programme last week. 4 stars. Oh, we'll take that. A decent listen. One thing, please get Schofield et al. A tissue to blow his nose. Hearing snorting for 2 hours isn't great. Don't listen to this week's podcast. Just delete it now.
Well, I am doing it. I did say before the start, I have got cold, and I am doing my best to combat when my nose is running and
we are the 33rd biggest rugby podcast in the United States of America.
And weren't we big in Lithuania or something?
Luxembourg, as opposed to the Prime Minister,
Yeah, we didn't get booed in Luxembourg.
And if you just think right now, because apparently there's some global international rugby tournament starting soon, which you can't name because they'll ask us to pay money for it. Although Scottish golf tournament looks a bit like the Cup.
Even though they stole our name.
Even though they stole our name.
To stay our name.
And it's based on a myth and all that jazz. all that rubbish. Just think how many rugby podcasts are going to be starting soon. Because it doesn't... Apple don't discriminate between the various flavours of rugby. It could be rugby sevens we're talking about. And we are 14th in Great Britain in terms of rugby. Now again, A, thank you. B, what's quite amusing is that some podcasts that are rugby podcasts haven't marked themselves down as rugby, so they're not in the charts. So we're quite keep doing it, lads. We actually got the 48th in the charts just on last week's episode alone. Lack of respect, says Josh. Have a word. Partington gives it, but he's willing to take it. Didn't cry about JSL's tackle and flawed Watson a number of occasions.
No, hold on. What we're on about here is literally patting on the head. Because I tell you what, he was looking at Mac Shane flattening him, because Macca's not a tough lad. I've known Macca since he was 12 years of age, and the kid can handle himself. And I think Mark mentioned that he's played over 400 games as Mac Shane. Do not be disrespected.
You don't rip off a headband mid-game.
No, but every time, but later on in the game, he patted him on the head. Yeah, I think he did it to 2 or 3 players, maybe 3 or 4, didn't he?
The problem is, if this was a Castleford player we were talking about, if Jake Truman had done the same thing to a Wigan player, and then a Wigan player landed on his head, then it would be the Cass fans moaning, and the Wigan fans would be going, "Oh, he's done nothing wrong." Well, the wrong way around, I've got that, but you know what I mean, because everyone's very parochial and whatever. Just to finish off the disciplinary, because we've got some others to mention. Danny Tickle, Workington, Grade B, danger contact, 1 match penalty notice. Matthew Wright of Newcastle. He's gone wrong since leaving Channel 5. Grade D, high tackle, referred to tribunal and also going to the tribunal. Oliver Brooks of Widnes and James Cunningham of London for grade F and acceptable language, and we'll see what happens with those cases when those are released in the next few days or whatever. There's plenty of things to talk about disciplinary in rugby league, but that's something we're working on. We'll talk about in the future.
I thought what was really interesting in the League One playoff games and obviously the elimination final in the Championship. Hats off to the away teams. I mean, I didn't think Workington would win at Hunslet. I certainly didn't think Doncaster would win at Newcastle.
Exactly.
And Featherstone's performance last night was quite exceptional. Particularly in the first half, I thought they were absolutely superb.
McClellan can't get a start. Leeds, pretty good, wasn't he?
I think the important thing is that he's clearly improving every week, and that's why Leeds sent him to Featherstone.
Is that because he's playing?
Well, I think he's not playing at a Super League level, but he's getting to know how to run a game. I thought his kicking game was almost as impressive as the try that he scored, and he clearly needs to fill out a little bit physically, which he will as he has another pre-season. Yeah. But I'd say he's in the mix at Leeds for next year.
He's got a good OKR, hasn't he? He's got an OKR.
No, not according to his agent.
Well, according to social media.
Well, if we've got to look up and sign Luke Gale.
Well, I still think he'll be in the mix. And I think that if Luke Gale was at Leeds and he was mentoring Callum McClelland, there's a logic to that. But I thought Alex Sutcliffe was my man of the match.
Phil, there's only so much mentoring you can do in training park.
Yeah.
The kid needs to be playing to get better. Does that make sense?
And he is playing in the Championship, which is probably the best level.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's all right being around the dressing room and on the training park, but you need to be playing, and because if you're not putting the pressure at any level, you're not going to find out what you can and what you can't.
I think he showed again what he could do. Be a great game this week, York and Featherstone. Can't wait for that.
Well, absolutely.
Can't wait for that.
I mean, we're not one of those programs who does the whole "oh, we're great" thing. I can say, because a couple of people have mentioned it already, and we're talking about Liam Featherstone right now. Thought it was going to fall on my head. He's seen your messages, he appreciates them. Don't need to say anything else.
No.
Somebody did some very bad commentary on Saturday, which you can go watch on YouTube. Go watch it. Some good tries.
But again,
it's not as easy a job as people think.
I'm not going to blow smoke at his bottom.
No.
Because I've already done that privately. I just think
the
guy who's normally sat here, isn't he?
Oh, sorry. Right.
To have one really knowledgeable commentator who can describe the action, and one summariser who can explain to you what is happening.
Correct.
It works, and it makes it such an enjoyable listen.
Absolutely.
And I thought the interviews at the end, where the commentator who's seen the game unfold is interviewing 3 or 4 other people that have been right involved in the action, it works.
Oh, of course it does.
But I'm not mentioning it.
I've got to say,
he'll never come back.
We'll get back to Liam Fev in a minute because we've got more to talk about that. I've got to say, by the way, that Women's Super League game on Saturday, I've forgotten about it in time. The kit clash. Deal with me. Blue shirts, white shorts, blue socks.
Which teams were it?
Leeds and Wakefield against blue shirts, white shorts, blue socks. Now, as the game goes on, you tend to recognise more and more players by various things, but
it's a basic.
It's difficult. And Leeds' numbers where the 6 and the 8s look similar.
Tell you what, lads, I'm just looking out the window there. I'm not looking at dressing gown on. Have a look at out there.
What, enough?
I'm going to say wearing the
There's something there walking out with a dressing gown on.
Well, they must know you're in the area. I think that's
catching on.
That's a tribute act to you.
It's catching on.
This is almost
catching on.
It's Little Red Riding Hood.
Isn't it? It's catching on. That's a dressing gown.
This part of Leeds is not Belle Isle. This is almost Harrogate.
I think
it's called Bel Air where I live.
They know you're in the area. That's the crowd waiting for you when you leave.
The dressing gown king. Come on.
They're all doing the jokes about Belle. They're all doing
Bel Air. Yes.
Here's Jeff. Oh, by the way, 2 other people, before I get back onto that, Graham says we'll miss the show next week. He's off to Munich's Oktoberfest. So we'll be sampling a few shandies. Enjoy that, Graham. And
can't we go do the show there with him?
The team in Germany.
Have one from us.
Can't we go to Munich?
And flight concern, Captain Jibbers. When is the last episode of 4020 Live in 2019? Some point in December.
Yeah.
We don't stop. There's always something.
We haven't looked when Christmas Eve is, but it'll be round about then.
Well, we'll do a Christmas special again and everything. Scully's not going on tour, we don't think so.
We might do a late night version.
Yeah. Did Lee make Fev look good last night, or are Fev a decent side? I don't watch most of the Championship. Andy and Sue says great Fev League game, but would Fev be in this position without dual registration? I've given a lot of stick to Fev. People think I'm criticising them, but as we said on the show last week, I think you said it, not you because you weren't here. But someone said it. They do dual reg in the right way because it works for both parties. I think Leeds get benefit. Featherstone get benefit. Yes, perhaps they do have a lot of key players in key positions from the Leeds Rhinos, but you can also make the argument that Lee, a few weeks ago, went out and spent and bought in players to improve their chance of promotion to the Super League.
Again, I don't see those teams regularly enough to pass comment.
No.
But what I would say is one looked like a team of individuals, the other looked like a team. And I think that's the danger with doing a lot of your recruitment at the end of the season. You're bringing in star names like Kevin Brown, but it must upset the balance. It's almost like starting the season again, whereas Featherstone looked like a unit.
Did he play this to Kevin Brown?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah, McCollum pushed him off for his shot.
There's your answer then.
The problem
That's
is,
what I think.
Two individuals.
But-
there you go.
I just worry about Leeds for two reasons. One, because we saw what happened last year with a similar situation. Two, I don't know why they tried to gamble this year, going up against Toronto, who have been dominant in this division and have finished 16 points
Well,
clear.
that was the strange thing about
17
John Duffy's comments after the game last
16
week,
points clear.
that Toronto were bullies. Brian McDermott said Lee were bullies, and Duffy said he spat his dummy out. They're not going to play him now.
It just seems very odd. It's
I
just an odd
also-
thing to do.
We also now know that whoever does get promoted, it's going to be a new name in Super League.
Yeah,
Mm.
which is exciting.
Which is important for Super League, I think.
Let's just say here then, York make it. Will York say we don't want it because we're not ready?
I think they will be ready. I
Didn't
think
they say
New
yes?
stadium.
Oh yeah, new stadium. Yeah, I'm not saying.
No, but we
I'm not saying they're
the-
going to sell it
the-
because the new
No.
stadium.
But would you go up and take the money for a season where everyone's on the like
yeah.
what London have done this year?
And I also think there are some. It's very late to recruit players, but there are some players out there that you could get that maybe you played for London this year that aren't yet signed to other clubs. That the team that gets promoted. We all know it's no secret. If Toronto get promoted, they are going big.
Oh yeah, they're going to
will
be
sign
changing their
some-
side.
They will be
So they
signing
will
two
lose.
marquee players. And
No,
they
they'll
won't
sign a
be-
bucket load of players.
They won't be messing about.
No.
They will be competitive from a minute again. I think Toulouse are building. I watched a bit of the Toulouse game against York this week. A bit like it's not a direct comparison. A bit like Parramatta. They know how to play. They don't care where they are on the pitch.
Yeah,
If
true.
it's on, they'll play.
Yeah.
And Corella was just magnificent this week. And some of the tries that they fashioned. I think if they would get a couple of experienced players to add to the core of talented French guys they've got, they'd be okay in Super League. I think York would have the most work to do. Featherstone, I don't know how it would work. If they didn't have access to the dual registered players that they've currently got, I genuinely don't know how that would work. But I think certainly the top three, if they got up there, they'll enhance Super League.
So then, with the quality, look at the quality of Featherstone, Toulouse, and York. It's not a given that Toronto automatic promotion
I think
to be these sides.
the one thing Toronto have got this year that perhaps they didn't have last year is they've got a coach that
Yeah,
knows
of
how
course.
to win a grand final.
Yeah.
And they've got
Yeah,
a
we all
coach
know
that
that,
will have the right tactics to win the grand final,
Yeah.
whoever he's playing.
Yeah.
And I think they've got players like John Wilkin who have gone there specifically.
To
do a job.
Yeah.
And I think if you say to John, there's 80 minutes there, you've got to control this game and make sure your team win. He's still good enough to do that.
Oh yeah, without it.
So I think, yes, Toulouse have a chance because they're very unorthodox. But I can't see Toronto being beat.
Right.
But that's why I think it's an absolute disgrace that they've not been told one way or the other. if they're
Yeah, exactly.
promoted.
Yeah.
Well, this is, I think it was Carson who mentioned earlier, or someone, forgive me if I've got the wrong name, the split has done everything. We keep saying this, the split of power between the RFL and Super League, they need each other more than they realise on many different levels, and this is another case where there is a club within the system. They're not actually members, are they? This is where it all gets complicated as well. Are they associate members or whatever? They're not full members of the Rugby Football League, but
So
they're in the system and they...
So we know what. Well, let's just say if Super League don't let Toronto in, will that be the end of Toronto? Will they say stuff in?
I think,
We'll finish it?
you know what, I'm going to go even further. It's the end of the credibility of the sport at a major level,
If I was David Argyle,
if we've got any.
who was over-invested, but made it clear from minute one that he was buying a championship team in League One, a Super League team in the championship, the money that he spent on the kit when they were in League One was more than most teams get as a handout from the RFL. They have made it completely clear from minute one that their aim and objective was Super League. If they're denied,
Yeah.
and I was him, I'd turn it into a rugby union team. which would be an absolute travesty.
Because it's easy enough to just do that, isn't it? There's no...
Well, they've got a professional league, haven't they?
And
Well, in Canada, they've got a professional league over there.
well, they've got in North America. They've got. They're trying to build a professional.
So it would be easy just to transform.
with the best way in the world, most of the people there won't know the difference.
No.
Because it's a brand new thing.
Over in Canada this week, Martin Crick, who is a senior coach educator with the International Federation, has been out running the first level 1 courses in Canada. So all of that work, aside from what Toronto are doing, will be completely wasted.
It's not as if, say, rugby league in this country imploded and there was no money, and the Rugby Union Premiership said to Wigan, Leeds and St Helens, come and be part of our competition. People wouldn't follow, because we're going back to Swinton and Manchester here, aren't we? People wouldn't follow Leeds Rhinos in the Rugby Union Premiership because they support the Leeds Rhinos in the Rugby League Super League, because they don't watch Rugby Union, because as has been proven at Wigan with Orrell, and here in Leeds with Yorkshire Carnegie, or whatever they're called this week, they don't watch them because they like watching Rugby League, they don't like watching Rugby Union. But
we know the intrinsic differences and which side of the divide we stand on. But in new markets, they don't.
And it's an interesting point, because in the women's game, Rugby Union is far more important to Rugby League because of the available player pool, which is an interesting thing. Don't forget, if you're a big fan of internationals, New Zealand shirt, look, New Zealand Kiwis got one here. Not £54, you can't see that because I've looked on the thing. £26 until midnight tonight at
if you play 54 quid, you get a play for that as well.
You get to coach Tonga.
You get a Kiwi play for 54
Got a
quid.
free t-shirt as well.
Also Filipana. Yeah, he did fit that, wouldn't he? Ollie?
Not sure he would.
Using the promo
You get
code,
Dean Clark.
the legend
1996 all over again.
I don't know who worse. Matt Smith or Dean Clark.
speaks. The legend speaks.
Could-
Mascotbrowns.com.
The other thing, if we're talking about, and this isn't positive or negative rugby league, it's just where we
It's just-
are as a sport.
Hashtag actual rugby league.
Rugby league reality.
Right, yeah.
What on earth is going on with Tonga? You know, the whole of the international game has been revitalised by the fact we've now got a 4th nation.
Yeah.
The semi-final of the last World Cup.
Yeah. I was there.
You were there.
I was there,
You
yeah.
said one of the most emotional afternoons you could ever wish to be at. The fans are desperate.
Yeah.
They're passionate.
Yeah.
They bring something to the sport.
Yeah.
The sacrifices that
Yeah.
Taumalolo and
Everything
Fafita-
what you want to bring, yeah.
So we're now at the point where the players are saying we're going to boycott playing for Tonga because we don't like the administration. And the players actually probably are in the right at the moment. And they've changed the coach. We know Christian Wolff is coming to St Helens.
Who's the coach now?
Well, they brought Frank Endicott in. Originally, it was going to be it was going to be Garth Brennan, who's just been sacked by Gold Coast. Now it's Frank Endicott. Happy Frank.
Phil, well, to be honest with you, right, to be honest
What are
with
we
you,
doing
well,
as a sport?
Phil, to go right, do you know bringing Frank Endicott for Tonga is like having Scully coaching Great Britain, and I would imagine all the players say, "Yeah, we're not this administration." I understand that. Frank
Richie
Endicott.
Mylan.
Frank
Oh,
Endicott.
do you?
Frank's back.
Why? Who's
Because
brought him in?
the committee in Tonga, who control such appointments, are going against the wishes of their players to promote who they want, and the players are all writing letters saying we're not playing for you.
Yeah, well, unfortunately nowadays, and it's in all sports, it is player power. Doesn't matter which sport
But
you
in-
play,
No, Frank
it's
Endicott.
all
I
player
get that.
power.
But in this respect, how much do we need Tonga?
Oh, massively.
Great Britain are going on
Massively.
tour. We're not
Massively.
playing Australia, we're playing
Massively.
Tonga. It could be a huge event, a
Yeah.
recreation of
Correct.
that semi-final.
Yeah.
But if
It's not-
Tamalolo and Fafita and Lola here and whoever aren't playing, who wants to watch Great Britain play Tonga domestic players?
Tongaree. I'm on the.
So Frank Endicott is their coach.
Well, I'm on Frank
He's just
Endicott's
been
Wikipedia page. Right.
Laughable.
Wikipedia,
Absolutely laughable.
I mean, Wikipedia's not always accurate, right? But his last job on here was witness for 3 games.
Didn't go as well as it could.
And then international job, 2008. Endicott was involved in his 3rd World Cup. You're thinking, right, go on then. Coaching the
When New Zealand won it,
coaching the New Zealand Police
ah,
in the inaugural Police World Cup.
the festival of World Cup.
And that's it. Oh, he's also a player agent. Oh, not another player.
Oh, he's a player. That's what he is. He's a player's agent.
I'll be picking all his mates. Players, agents. Well,
But the point I'm making is
Yeah, I
whether,
understand.
whether it's Frank
We
Hendrick
can't,
or not.
we can't afford to
What
lose
the
Tonga.
hell are we
Correct.
doing?
Exactly. I don't
The
get it.
whole invigoration of international rugby league has come about because we had a fourth nation in Tier 1, and there's the aspiration of some of the other Pacific nations to follow on.
Well, to be honest with you,
And we, whatever the politics of it, whoever's at fault,
well, to be honest,
we cannot allow that to happen.
no, I agree. And to be honest with you, Tonga, why didn't? And no disrespect to Lebanon, but why didn't Tonga go for something like Brad Fittler?
Well, and even
Because Brad's allowed to because
I
of
think he's
USAF.
left Lebanon anyway.
Well, why did they go for? Why did they get Brad Fittler then?
But the other thing is, if the International Federation genuinely has teeth,
Yeah.
presumably it's got to intercede in this and say, look, Tonga have been a massive success story. What is the issue? We will broker something, but this can't be allowed.
I agree. It's like me. Being given Great Britain job, there'll be uproar. Wouldn't there?
I don't want to.
Depends who you pick. If you pick Jeff Gratian,
I don't want to.
There'll be uproar, wouldn't there?
I don't want to go.
I think the fans would boycott. We're not even going to go watch if he's coaching.
One of rugby
Go on,
league's
Rich.
favourite tropes, as they say. But his name was mentioned earlier, actually. Everything on this programme on the desk is for a reason, as is my T-shirt. What's Nigel Wood up to these days? The head of the International Federation. Well, he's not in his boxing odds up because we know that it's all locked up. They've changed the locks and everything. Where is he?
I would have
I think
thought.
Singapore. Where's his report on New York? As someone pointed out earlier.
I would have thought the only thing at the moment that would have been a massive priority is preparing for the World Nines. Wales have named their team. Great. Regan Grace is in it. Sorting out the Tonga situation.
I just, do you know what? It's laughable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you reckon we're getting hospitality
Or
Jews with
it's
it?
pathetic.
Has he got a box there?
And they might say,
I was invited to just be witness game last week,
they might say they don't want to micromanage nations, but we're not a big enough sport not to.
No. Honestly, because you know what, the type of people they just want to see their internationals in their colours.
We saw on social media last year Andrew Fafita telling his father and grandfather that he'd selected Tonga ahead of Australia, and the emotion we saw when they played so well in the World Cup. They went back, and Taumalolo and Lolohea were given land where their families lived, and it means everything. Look at, again, going back to Parramatta, look at Mika Siva, who is Fijian, he's not Tongan, but the pool of talent that we can tap into if we get it right. He's the leading try scorer in the NRL this year. Nobody had heard of him before this season. He looks,
How good is he?
well, I say he looks the most supreme athlete on the wing.
How good is he?
But if there's one Mika Siva, there's got to be 10. And if there's 10 in Fiji, there's got to be another 10 in Tonga. This is so important for the sport that we get this right. And to have most of the players saying we're not going to play.
Who's on the Tongan administration side? Is it any
It's somebody in
players or?
No,
We don't want to go down the route of colonialism with these teams, but
No,
people are very concerned about Scully, by the way.
what on his colour?
Very. Go home and put your dressing gown on, says Denise.
I'm very concerned that when this is finished, I'll have what he's got.
Tom says you should have called in sick. David says we need to antibacterialise the pitch afterwards. Got the crumbs
I
on
apologise out there. I apologise.
Don't worry.
I'll be better next week.
I'm trying to think of what I put a list of things out on Twitter earlier of things we need to talk about, but I think we pretty much talked about everything. We haven't really talked about the games this year.
I'd like to talk about Salford.
We need to talk about
Because
Salford
I know
they've
that,
done really good stuff.
I know that we get some criticism, not least when we're back against them.
Yeah.
I think what they've achieved this year
Yeah.
is absolutely phenomenal. I got the chance to see them at first hand the week before this when they were at Headingley, and I had appreciated from watching them on telly some of the great things they do, but I think unless you see that panoramic view of the way the team sets themselves up and covers for each other, you don't really get it unless you can view it live. They are one of the best organised teams I have seen this year. We know that Wigan are extremely disciplined. We know that St Helens can turn it on if you allow them to do it. But in terms of playing to your strengths, I don't think there's a better team than Salford out there at the moment.
Wolfie was sure. I'm sure Ian Buss is a very smart coach and he knows exactly what Wigan about, certainly this time of year, he knows exactly the way that Wigan play. One thing for sure, what Salford can't do though, Phil. When I saw him play Warrington after the Challenge Cup final, for the first 40 minutes,
Yeah,
they just played in the arm whistle.
you can't do that.
They can't do that
They
against
don't
Wigan.
need to do that.
Exactly. So they cannot. If they think for 40 minutes they can get an arm wrestle with Wigan, well, I'll tell you what, that arm will be broken. It will be broken after 20 minutes because Wigan will just literally suffocate them like they do with everybody if anybody tries to take them on at their own game from there. So, but Ian Watson's a smart coach. He's proved it himself, so he knows exactly the way what Wigan will play, and he can't go there. And I'm expecting Jackson Hastings and Louis and Niall Evans to have absolute blinders, and the hooker. What's his name? The
Lussick.
Lussick
I'm not sure Louis will. Tamaloa might. Not Tamaloa.
Lola here, I meant, from there, and I'm expecting plenty.
There's a big signing, Louis.
I'm expecting plenty of ball movement from there and plenty of width away from the ruck area because they can't get in the arm wrestle.
The other thing that I think is hugely commendable about Ian Watson and his staff is that they've had to deal with the same thing that London did, in that they know the core of that team is going to break up next year. Two players that are in the dream team. Josh Jones is going to Hull. Jackson Hastings is going to Wigan.
Yeah.
So, and we've all known for long enough during this season that the bulk of that team is not going to be there next year.
Yeah.
It takes a special coach to get everybody to buy into the fact that there's a job here that we need to do before you all disappear.
Hey, look at great history.
And Danny Ward did that, and we praised Danny Ward, saying, you're going to be, we rightly praised him. But Ian Watson's done as good a job, if not better. And I just think finishing third, when you consider that, 3 weeks ago we were saying, it'd be Hull, it'd be Warrington, might be Catalan if they ever put a run together, it could be Castleford if they get to Seaster. Nobody picked Salford to finish third. And to get a second chance as well.
And finished in 11th. No.
But to get a second chance.
Yeah. Well, they've done superb, haven't they? And the fact that they got the win they needed on the final day of the season in Golden Park, helped by Warrington being rubbish, but still, they did what they had to do. And they are rightfully deservedly third. And it's good to see a new team, stroke names.
I think it would be fantastic if they could get to Old Trafford from the point of view of there's an opportunity of a new name on the trophy. I think Super League would be, to coin a phrase, pooing themselves if they did.
Got group on.
But I just love the way they play. And
So just moving on then from this, the week after then, whoever wins between Wigan and Salford, they play Saints, is that
yes.
Right?
And the loser plays the winner of
the loser plays the winners of Warrington and Castleford at home.
Right, so then the week after, whoever loses in, let's just say Saints and Wigan will play Salford or whoever.
It's supposed to favour the teams that finish first and second.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great system.
So Salford really then could play Wigan twice, couldn't they, back at the...
but what they've got is a second chance.
I buy to that.
And I absolutely think that if you're going to criticise Warrington for anything, and our correspondent was on earlier saying, relegation form over the last few weeks, the fact that they now are in sole elimination games is to their detriment. They should have secured second or third and got two bites of the cherry.
On this point, Parr says, why does it take a special coach they are contracted? Yeah, but we've seen players sulk all the time.
What's said there?
But the Salford players who are leaving or whatever, the fact that they still are giving 100% or
So they should.
But yes, but as we've seen plenty of times, the job of rugby league coach is almost babysitter at times as well. The attitude of players.
The responsibility now of most coaches in all sports is not a matter of coaching. It's a matter of, as you say, babysitting them, changing the nappy, making sure they're stirring the tea 3 times to the right, 4 times to the left, 2 sugars or 1 sugar.
I also think that the general on the field, the guy who represents the club off the field as well, who's had a massive influence on whatever that word culture is, has been Jackson Hastings. Now he is going to be playing against the team that is taking him on next year. I guarantee 100% you wouldn't know that on the Friday night. There'll be absolutely nothing left.
I don't think integrity will ever come into question, Phil, to be honest with you.
No.
I don't.
I think that's
not
partly
exaggerate.
down to the coach sitting everybody down saying, I know you're going, I know you've got reasons to self-preservation, maybe not give everything, but
No.
as a group, we need to do this.
I don't think that would be even for half a second, Phil. To be honest with you, because
I
these players can create history.
I do think the coach sets the tone.
Oh,
and if he'd allowed, some of the Hull fans that I've seen on social media have said it looks as though some of the guys who are coming to the end of their career have played a little bit like they're coming to the end of their career. Now, that's no criticism of Lee Radford, but what Ian Watson has managed to do is stop that happening at Salford. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, Mark's pulled you up, Phil. Why don't you recognise Saints' achievements this season?
I think we have every single week of the season.
You can only say, Saints, they're really good.
I think we said at the beginning that to finish 16 points clear, I hope St Helens win the grand final on the basis of the fact that I think their form this year needs to be rewarded, and that their players who have been so magnificent should be parading that trophy round on the last day of the season. I have absolutely no qualms at all in that they deserve reward. I mean, this is it, we said at the beginning of the show, they are topping the league by a record amount in history. So even the great Wigan teams that dominated in the 80s and 90s, they never finished 16 points clear. This is a phenomenal achievement. And the problem this season has been that that's almost got sidelined because all the interest has been in who's going to get relegated, who's going to make 4th and 5th, and nobody has paid enough tribute to what St Helens have done. And the shame from their point of view is that when they got the chance to do it on the national stage in the Challenge Cup final, they couldn't do it. But I hope Saints get their due reward at Old Trafford on the 12th of October. And I don't, as I said, there's 5 of their players in the dream team. I'd have a 6th in there in Lomax. So I have absolutely no qualms at all that they have been magnificent this year.
I think the last thing we need to mention that we haven't before we get on to the predictions is Tony Smith, who doesn't like relegation, mainly because he's the coach of a team at the bottom of the table. No, that's a bit harsh, but it's true, isn't it? It's a dangerous system that we have. Some people like it, some people find it exciting, some find that it's been interesting because there's been so many of us floundering at the bottom of the competition. I can't wait for the day when we're all talking about what's going on at the top of the competition and the dogfight to get to the finals. That's a far better system, and you start producing far better rugby league players than when you have that sort of system. But one day we might get that here. Of course we did have it, and then we got rid of it because people like promotion and relegation. If someone went down other than the team that benefited from St Helens putting out 2 weakened teams, I think there would have been a bad taste, whether it been us, whether it been Huddersfield, or whether it been Wakefield. If Wakefield weren't in the position tonight, needing to beat London to secure survival, they could have maybe had their best performance, and that's wrong. That's wrong that you can actually manipulate who stays in and who doesn't stay in. The problem with Tony Smith's comments are, A, Hull Kingston Rovers lost to the London Broncos last week. They lost to London Broncos in London a few weeks ago. When you look at the teams Saints put out, and I mentioned this earlier, they weren't that weak. They had plenty of international players in there.
Or young talent.
They didn't stick the Saints under 16s in, or put a couple from the women's team in there, and as ringers. They were recognisable Saints.
But they also had earned the right to do that by being so far ahead of everybody else.
Exactly.
And I think the issue.
They've got a squad of 25 players as well, So
there's an issue about promotion relegation.
There is.
There's an issue about loop fixtures and how that skews promotion relegation. If you didn't have the loop, let's say we had the loop fixtures but we didn't have the Magic weekend and you took that one result out, Huddersfield would have got relegated. So I think Tony Smith has a point, but I think he's aiming it at the wrong person. I think the one thing he's always been consistent about is that he's never liked promotion relegation, whether he's been coaching the team at the top or the bottom. So he's not suddenly saying it because Hull KR are involved. But I think the issue that he brings up is what we said earlier in the show. What does sport want to be? What can it be? What does it need to be? Why does it need to follow other sports? We have to play to whatever our strengths are. Whatever cards we've got in our hand is the poker hand we can play. Not what football's doing or rugby union's doing. And if we say, as a sport, we need to have some element of franchising, if that's what we decide we need to do, then we need to police it properly. Because we very nearly did it not that long ago, but we didn't police it. We didn't have the right system, and we didn't actually ever implement what it was supposed to be about. let's decide what we want to be, what we can be, what resource we've got, how much jam we've got, how thinly we want to spread it, and come up with a plan for the next 2, 5 and 10 years about what Super League's going to look like, what it involves, what it doesn't involve. If it is economics now that determine everything, let's be honest about it.
And the teams that Justin Holbrook picked for those games against London were teams that Justin Holbrook believed would beat London.
Yep.
And what they winning the both games as well. London just came back and beat them.
It's almost irrelevant, isn't it?
Why don't we credit London?
Exactly. Give credit where it's due. You know, let's not forget. I don't know when Wigan went down there. They picked a bit of a loose side, but Wigan were 10 or 12 points ahead. I think they were 10 or 12 nil up, and London came back and beat them.
Ahead quite easily on the first game of the season, and it couldn't see it out.
Leeds were ahead against them. They beat Leeds from there. So give credit where it's due.
Yeah.
We've probably never had a night in which the results went the wrong way for everyone who didn't have a dog in the fight. Because everyone wanted to see London up, and everyone wanted to see one of the other teams.
I think what we need to do is pay tribute to Wakefield, who had, weren't in a great run of form, but so dominated that game for an hour that they were never going to lose it. What they didn't give was London a sniff of that, and that's to Wakefield's credit. We all thought maybe it was going to be a cup final too far for London, but we wanted it to go to the Solheim Cup, the last put on the last green. So if it had been 1918 at Bellevue going into the last minute, that's what we all wanted. But Wakefield were too good.
It's interesting because he was asked in the press conference afterwards, was Danny Ward, did London fall to the pressure? And he went, no.
No, they didn't.
Wakefield didn't give them the opportunity to. Don't forget, until midnight tonight, this is Monday if you're watching on the 16th of September, because Ofcom will get us. You can get a New Zealand Rugby League shirt for £26 at mascotbrowns.com and get a free t-shirt. mascotbrowns.com using the promo code The Legend Speaks. Because it is just about time now for the world famous predictions. There's an actual real piece of music with a genuine title. We'll start with the championship ones. Do you want to do League One or?
Words from the bottom.
Let's go through League One and in the semi-finals, and we start at some point on Sunday. with Oldham Ruffians versus Just Doncaster.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, great victory for Doncaster, wasn't it, up at Newcastle. Nobody would have thought that whatsoever, but Oldham with a week off, and Scott Naylor saying he wants to put Oldham where he want to be before he leaves. He's had 7 great years from there, and it just hasn't got him over the line for that championship, so this will be a massive test for Doncaster, but he gets a tune out and does Horney over at Hull from there, so big test for Oldham, but I just think Oldham, I'll have a little bit too much quality, and I'll go Oldham by 10.
I think you're right. I think at this stage of what has been a gruelling season, a week off is particularly valuable. Doncaster have been in one cup final, and it's elimination up, all the way. I don't know that they can get up again. I think Oldham have been underestimated this year. We've talked about maybe Newcastle will go up, maybe Hunslet will have a good season, but Oldham have just hung in there. I'll go Oldham by 6.
I don't know about either team, so I'm just going to go Oldham because they're at home and they finish above them in the table, 6 points above them. So I'm going to go for Oldham as well. And the winners of that will play the winner of the second semi-final, which is not on the Our League app. That is Newcastle Thunder, who coming off that defeat against Doncaster, against the Workington Town side, who went to Hunslet and won.
Well, Foreman, when he took over Workington, one thing what he said, he wanted consistency in performances, like every coach wants to go to it, and he's getting it. And I say for Workington to go to Hunslet and turn Hunslet over from there was a magnificent victory. Surprise loss for Newcastle, so he'll want the reaction more. Is it Finnegan, isn't it, Newcastle now?
Dennis Betts.
And they'll want the reaction. And is this maybe a game too far for Workington? Well, speaking to one of the directors yesterday, no, it's not. They're looking forward to it, and they like being on the road. They like playing away from home, to be honest with you, from there. So this will be a big test for Newcastle. They've got big ambitions, haven't they? But I just feel as though that surprise loss to Doncaster, maybe just a bit of a kick up the backside, what they required. Maybe a game too far for Workington, but I don't think there'll be much in it. But I'll just go the Thunder. I'll go the Thunder by 7.
I'm with you. I think if Newcastle had any pretensions that these playoffs were going to be easy, they got that knocked out of them this week. I think that they'll be working overtime this week to make sure the same thing doesn't happen. They've earned the right to be at home. They need to make that count. I think they'll win. I think they'll win by 16.
And I'm just going to go with Newcastle as well. It's going to be an interesting one, though, that isn't it? Because Newcastle have obviously spent big. They're kind of like the League One version of Lee, although one might say slightly more sustainable. I don't know, but it would be good for the sport if they were in a higher division, which is not necessarily a reason to tip a team. I'm going to go for Newcastle anyway. But what a great job Chris Thornton's done, having left his role at Huddersfield last year with Workington. I'm sure they'll go on to more success in 2020. And the Championship will start on Sunday with the big game on the telly. Winners go straight through to the final. It's Toronto versus Toulouse.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say too much because I don't really like watching Toronto. I think they just have too much quality, even though Toulouse had a good side. Sam will do them. I'll just go the Wolfpack by 14. Not bothered really by the Wolfpack. Can't say to them.
It's interesting how Toulouse approach this, because they could be going back to Toronto for the grand final. And there's potentially a hell of a lot of travel for them in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So how do you pay? Do you go all out and try and win this game, get a week off and
go back again,
and then go back again? Or do you say, look, let's treat it a little bit as reconnaissance for the big game that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to have a bit of fun and enjoy ourselves, but actually it doesn't really matter whether we win or lose. I mean, no places, it doesn't really matter, but it's not a be-all and end-all result.
Yeah.
And I suspect that Toronto will want to put down a marker. The danger for them is they may only play one game in 3 weeks and have to then prepare for a grand final. But I think Toronto are geared up for this. Toulouse can trouble them with the tactics that they play because they're completely unorthodox. They will move the ball from wherever they feel they can. And I think that's a good test for Toronto at this stage. But I think the Wolfpack have just got too much this season. And I think as well they'll use the everybody's against us and we don't care. You know, they might not even let us up even if we win the competition. I think Brian McDermott, Brian Noble will use that as a galvanising factor. They don't want us, therefore we're going to make it difficult for them. So I'm going Toronto by 7.
I'm just hoping that Mr. Wilson gets back from Toronto in time for the show next week. This one's on the telly on Sunday night, 6:30. Toronto. What a fascinating set. Toronto by 12. Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock. The winners of this will play the losers of that, and the losers of this will go home. It's York versus, both League One games on our League app coming to rugbyleagueandtv.com on Twitter. It's the big one then, York versus Featherstone.
Yeah, there's nothing between these two sides at all, is it? To be honest with you, all season there's been absolutely nothing. I think when they played against each other, I think they've all been separated by a point or two, haven't they? And I don't think.
Well, I think they've played 3 times, haven't they? Featherstone won 2 of them.
And not by many, have they? And and I don't think that'll be. I don't think many changes out of the week as well, to be honest with you. York, a great season consistency-wise. Featherstone, they'll be relying on the big game players, won't they, from there? I think this is going to be an absolute belter. I do, both entertainment-wise, enthusiasm-wise, intensity-wise. This could go to Golden Point, and I think it will go to Golden Point. And I think with the maverick of a player what he is for Featherstone, Dane Chisholm, I think Chisholm could be the winner. I'm going Featherstone by the Golden Point.
Is Mark Campbell going to be in one box and one box in the second?
That's for each of us.
The Mark Campbell derby. I think this is the game of the weekend.
Absolutely.
I'm really, really looking forward to this because of everything that's at stake. And I know there's an elimination game between Warrington and Castleford, but we'll get to that in a minute. I genuinely at the moment don't think either Warrington or Castleford can win the grand final. So this to me has all the ingredients of being one of the great cup ties. I think we quite rightly praised Salford for finishing 3rd. We've mentioned it all season that York finishing 3rd is a magnificent achievement. James Ford is a fabulous coach, got lovely balance in their team. But I thought the way Featherstone played last night against Lee was them saying, we know we've got to be on the road if we're going to win this, but don't rule us out. They've got a great balance in their team. York took a bit of a pasting at Toulouse, but again, I think they knew they had that second chance. And I think when you go behind in a cup tie by maybe 2 or 3 scores, there isn't really a lot of point trying to salvage a game that you're not going to. You save something in reserve for the following week. So this will be a different York at home. I just think that it's hard to back against York because of everything they've achieved this year. When they've been put in the pressure situations, they've come up with the goods. That's how they finished third. I think you're right though. This one could go right to the wire. I'm going to go York by 2.
This is going to be a great game, isn't it? 2 teams that are entertaining to watch. Are Featherstone allowed to get more players on duration on leads this season?
No.
The whole first team. What's Trent Merrin doing in a Featherstone Rovers shirt? What's going on here?
Conrad Hurrell has said so.
Ash Hanley improves his try-scoring record. That'd be prestigious, aren't they? I'm going to go side with York, but I think this will be a very close game. Hopefully, we know York are good on social media, and hopefully plenty will follow the game at their home ground, and plenty will also make the short trip from Fev to York. But I think York will just have enough on the day, and they'll go for York by 2. We've got some big breaking news coming up, by the way, at the end of the podcast, which is big breaking news for Scully. Thursday, Super League elimination final. Losers go home as the Wellington Wolves take on the Castleford Tigers.
Yeah, well, the Castleford Tigers, if they could have picked anybody for a fixture in the 5, it would have been Warrington. I think Darryl Powell made it 7 weeks ago. He wanted 7 from 7. I think he got 4 from 7, didn't he? But I think he's pretty happy because they're in semi-final mode. And the defeat a couple of weeks ago against St Helens, only by 4 points. It was only because the half-backs were clueless. They got beat last week. Great victory against Hull with what Truman did. But again, it was the same old last week with the half-backs. And certainly Jake Truman. Do you know how many times Jake Truman got caught dummy half? 6 times.
But there was no outlet for him other than you do it, Jake.
No, but this is what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, if I quoted Jake Truman and said, Jake, you don't go anywhere near that dummy half, that is not your responsibility. And somebody else will be getting told off. You know, Max Shane or even looks forward, but anyway. But there was nowhere anywhere near as good the week before. But Castleford have been ready for this one. Warrington Wolves couldn't finish an embarrassing season for them. You know, we know certainly that the grand final and Old Trafford is a 1-1, and as we know, we play Costa wouldn't have brought over from there. But I think Castleford will fancy this. I do, and. What I saw Warrington last week against Leeds, it was a matter of, we'll just turn up because, you know, realistically we know we've got a home fixture next week. Castleford in the semi-final mode. I think they'll fancy this, even though Jesse Lafayette and Wrightson has been suspended. I'm going to cast 10 Warrington over, and I'm going to cast by 10.
I don't think Warrington will play as badly this week as they did last week. My worry with Cass is I can't see points in them. And that was evident against Wigan, that, you know, if you manage to block Truman out, which Wigan successfully did, what is the alternative for Cass? At the moment, there isn't one.
Yeah.
The load isn't being shared enough. If you allow Truman to play, he can beat you on his own. But if your defence suffocates him, I don't know where Castleford's points are coming from. I think the defining factor in this game is being at home. I think that the Warrington fans will turn up and try and recreate the atmosphere they did in the Challenge Cup final. I think Steve Price will sit them down and say, we can play pressure cup tie football.
Yeah.
I think Austin isn't fully fit yet, but every week he plays he gets a little bit nearer. They can't play Matty Smith this week. They're going to have to bring, if he's fit, Declan Patton back. I think that makes the team better balanced, gives them more options. So I'm going to go Warrington by 8.
I'm going to go with the Tigers. Neither team have been great, have they? This is a game which probably no one's really looking forward to watching on Thursday night. Castleford will be unhappy because they've got to go away. And then we all know Thursday nights, it's impossible to get anywhere. The fact that Warrington have only won one of their last 9 and it was against Wakefield. No, I'm going to have to go with Castleford. Castleford by 6. Castleford by 6. And finally, Friday night. You'll get a second bite of the cherry if you lose this one. I'll get there early because the under-19s grand finals on Friday. Saints take on Wigan. But this time it's Wigan versus the Salford Red Devils, the neutrals' favourite team.
Well, you know what? This could be the game of the season because of two contrasting teams, isn't it? You know, and we all know what Wigan bring, and we all know, you know, it's still hard to believe. Wigan at the Magic Weekend had been beaten by Warrington, and they were in ninth and going absolutely nowhere. Still all the turmoil. Still coming from the Sean Waney battle, the Sean Edwards scenario. Is Adrian Lamb going to stay? When's George Williams going to announce that he's going? You could never believe that Wigan was going to finish second. But once I got it all sorted out, the consistency, what they have shown, and this is the part of the season what they love. Let's not forget as well, I think we do forget now and then, don't we, that they are the holders of this trophy.
Absolutely.
They are the holders of this trophy. But they're playing a Salford Red Devil side who, on the day, can play as well as anybody. The most attractive side, and on the par with St Helens when they want to be, when they're playing attractive rugby league. So this for me is the most interesting fixture of the season so far because of the two teams and where they play. Salford can't get into an arm wrestle with Wigan. They cannot say, well, all right, we'll be patient and we'll control the situation because Wigan will just absolutely suffocate it from there. So it's going to be an interesting ploy from Ian Watson how Salford Red Devils are going to start straight from the first kick-off against Wigan. I can't split them. Would anybody be saying that? You know, Salford playing the first semi-final, and you can't split Salford and Wigan from a point of view. And to be honest with you, I can't split them. Can Salford beat Wigan? Can they beat Wigan? The way Wigan play at the moment, I just can't see it. I just figure Wigan's got enough. Nothing in it though. I'm going Wigan by 7.
I think the one thing that you've highlighted there could be the difference is experience in playoff games.
Yeah.
That this is only Salford's second ever playoff game. Was it 13 years they were last in the playoffs under Carl Harris and got heavily beaten in the first round.
Bradford.
So they've nothing to draw on. Whereas Wigan are the team that love this time of year, meaningful matches, strangling the life out of the opposition. And the one thing we do know is that the Wigan defence will be magnificent. Because the reason they're second is built on their defence, it's not built on their ability to score a lot of points. Their points difference is 160, Salford's is 186, so that will tell you that perhaps Salford have got more about them. I would go with you that Wigan are the favourites for this, but there's one thought in the back of my mind, and that is Salford's performance at St Helens earlier in the season. Where they were 16 down inside about 10 minutes?
12 minutes,
And then they played the most magnificent rugby to be 30-16 ahead. They couldn't hold on, which was tribute to St Helens, who we all know are that much ahead of everybody else. I just think if Salford play the way they played that night, they can trouble Wigan. And that the one thing they need to do, like you say, is not get involved in who's got the hardest set of forwards, but get 12 points up early on. Quieten the DW Stadium and see how Wigan react to that, because I'm not sure Wigan have got too many players in their team that can score a lot of points. I think George Williams can, Oliver Gildart can, but when you're maybe 2 scores behind, it's a different dynamic. You start to force the ball a little bit. I've just got a very sneaky feeling that because they've got nothing to lose, they know they've got a second chance. And Salford might win this, and they might win it by 2.
Good call, it's a good call.
We don't want it to be exciting and close, don't we? I'm going to side with Wigan, but that's not to say that I think Salford can win, because this is a genuine toss of the coin fixture. But Wigan's form towards the end of the season, and the fact they're at home doesn't really change much for me. They were very good against Castleford last week. I know Salford are playing better than Castleford. Wigan by 4. I think they're all going to be very good games. Well, that's going to be a very good game. Castleford probably won't be. Not some good news for Scully, because the BBC, you've heard of them, they have announced they're going to switch off, this is on the BBC website, the BBC is to switch off the news and sport text services on the TV red button early next year. The decision spells the end of reading headlines, football scores, weather, travel news and more on TV sets 45 years after the launch of CFAX. From early 2020, a BBC spokesperson said. Viewers will no longer be able to access text-based BBC News and BBC Sport content by pressing red.
Devastated.
How are you going to find information?
Start a
then?
campaign.
Have you any more tissues? Oh.
It's a good job we're coming to an end now, guys.
CFAX is ending. Oh no. Oh no.
Well, the end of CFAX.
What am I going to do?
Right.
When I
How are you
wake
going to be up to date?
up, when I wake up early in the morning, at 1:30, 2 o'clock, what we're going to be looking at?
BBC News 24 apparently. The place to go to. We'll be back on
Unlike
Monday.
CFAX,
Hopefully I'll
we
be
will
better.
be back.
Hopefully I'll be better next week.
yeah. Blame the government, it's their fault.
I think you've done really well to stay out 2 hours in the condition that you're in. I've a horrible feeling I've got to go to bed now because you